Well, good morning. Welcome to the May 6th meeting of the Board of Supervisors. Nice to have such a full house today. So we begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Could the roll call, please?
Supervisor Groom.
Present.
Supervisor Horsley.
Here.
Supervisor Slocum. Supervisor Tissier.
Here.
President Pine.
Here. As usual, at the start of each meeting, we have a chance for public comment where individuals can speak to items that are not on the agenda, that are listed on the consent agenda, or pertain to the county manager's report or board member reports. Each individual can speak for up to 2 minutes, and since they're not agendized, the board cannot engage in discussion about the matters. So let's see, we'll begin with Martin Fox. Public comment.
Good morning, President Pine, members of the board, my fellow veterans, Supervisor Slocum and Mr. Maltby, and County Council, Mr. Byers. Thank you for your service to the county and pledging your allegiance to our republic, which guarantees freedom of association for all, even those persons living with serious mental illness who are insight deficient and cannot advocate for services that would restore their freedom to associate with their families. Laura's Law assisted outpatient treatment produces positive outcomes, and evidence of the positive outcomes was examined by the United States Department of Justice before it certified assisted outpatient treatment as an effective, economical, and humane way to promote recovery instead of relapse. That evidence shows implementing Laura's Law is a reasonable, rational, and economical way to produce positive outcomes for those living with mental illness who are insight deficient, including those who have served their country honorably. Laura's Law gives families like the late Errol Chang's family, as well as law enforcement officers, the option of preventing confrontations involving untreated serious mental illness from ever taking place. The health system's intellectually bankrupt and immoral policies and procedures uses the brutality of the street to modify their behavior. Under the cover of 8 separate grants of civil and criminal immunity from prosecution in the violence-producing Lanterman-Petrus Short Act and its co-conspirator HIPAA, persons living with mental illness who are insight deficient need the incentive Laura's Law provides to help them truly recover, because it provides access to treatment based on their need, not the threat untreated serious mental illness presents. We know about 10 deaths and serious injuries that the health system's policies and procedures have produced in the last 10 years. So give hope to Errol Chang's family members that his death will make a difference for persons living with mental illness who are insight deficient, and vote to implement Laura's Law. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Teresa Dyer.
Good morning, Teresa Dyer, Pacifica, California. I am here to seek justice. I'm a Korean veteran, and I'm going to read a letter every week until I get this thing resolved. And this one is from the late Lou Papin. Dear Mrs. Dyer, I'm writing in response to your concerns regarding the family court system in San Mateo County. My aide, Alex Turek, has expressed your concerns and met with Peggy Thompson, the court executive officer of the San Mateo Family Court. Ms. Thompson is currently investigating your allegations and will update me of her findings. I certainly sympathize with your individual situation. My aide has informed me of the hardships your divorce has cost you financially and emotionally. Unfortunately, as an elected official, I cannot be involved in individual legal matters such as any actions taken against your former husband. I will continue to stay in contact with Ms. Thompson regarding not only your personal grievances, but the overall state of affairs of the family court system. Once again, I truly sympathize with your situation, and if I or my staff can be of future assistance, please do not hesitate to contact me. I wish you nothing but health and happiness the holiday season. There's another one from Jackie Spear that my friend will be reading to you. There's a copy for each of you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Celestia Aguilar. If I'm pronouncing that right, Celestia Aguilar.
Good morning. My name is Celestina Aguilar. I'm just taking care of my mom. I live in San Mateo County for over 30 years, and I enjoy living in this country. However, with the recent cost of living in San Mateo County, it's become harder for me to survive with this county home care workers with the current age $11.50 an hour or average annual income less than $14,700. It's difficult to me to stay at home care working, and I am found the service they provide to my client, and I'm asking a board to supervisors to invest in IHS program so that I can keep my job instead and switch to a better paid career. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Tu Do. I may be mispronouncing that. I'm sorry.
Good morning, Board and Supervisor. My name is Tuy Hoa Do. My husband is a recipient of San Mateo In-Home Support Services. I'm thankful that our government provides this program to take care of the senior and the people with a disability. Through this program, not only my husband receives professional and qualified care that lead to the better health, the better life. He also stay with us and keep connect with community stake and institutionalized. In-home support services provide the opportunity of the senior and the people with disabilities in this county, like my husband, remain socially connected to friends, family, and independence. With our current aging population in San Mateo County, we need to place our communities first by investing and promoting this in-home support system program. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
I'm sorry, the bottom line, I would thanks a lot. County San Mateo keep the in-home support system program to take care of those people, get better life in this country, and we feel this County San Mateo is the best county in California. Thank you.
Thank you. Roger Medler.
Hi, this is from Jackie Spears to Teresa Dyer thank you for contacting my district office regarding the civil case you have been involved with against your ex-husband. A member of the district attorney or district office staff, Mr. Kevin Mullins, has contacted the gentleman you have been dealing with, Assistant County Clerk M.L. Tormer, to inquire about your case. Your remedies appear to be available, if at all, through the justice system, not through the legislative arena. You should further pursue the civil case. You will need the assistance of an attorney. For information about obtaining the legal services of an attorney, you may contact the Lawyer Referral Service. We know all about that. It is also my understanding that you may attempt persuading District Attorney Jim Fox's office to handle this case as a criminal one. As you know, the District Attorney is an independent elected public official over whom I have no authority. I am confident Mr. Fox will seriously consider the issues in your case to determine if the criminal conduct which may be prosecuted is evident. Should you want to follow this course of action, you may inform permanent documentation to District Attorney. And the last two speakers, I didn't understand a word they said. Maybe it's me, but maybe encourage them to say that again or something. Thank you.
Jessica Avendano.
Good morning. My name is Jessica Avendano, Program Manager with 4Cs, also known as the Child Care Coordinating Council. And on behalf of our organization, I just wanted to thank you for supporting the Family Child Care Business Series. Often, the series is the first professional development experience providers have with our agency. And so it serves as a gateway to additional opportunities in the early childhood education field that will help sustain their business, such as quality assessment visits, career counseling, and support navigating the community colleges. So again, I'd just like to thank you for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for commenting today. Bonnie Grimm.
Good morning. I'm here representing Peninsula Volunteers, and my name is Bonnie Grimm, and I'm the assessment coordinator for the Meals on Wheels program with Peninsula Volunteers. And so I'm going to read a statement that my boss wrote, who's on vacation right now. Thank you for your past support of Peninsula Volunteers and the opportunity to submit an application for funding. For over 35 years, PVI has been a sole provider of home-delivered meals to South San Mateo County residents. The cost of meal preparation, packaging, and delivery is around $13 per meal. This does not include the community support provided by volunteer drivers and food donations. Our total program operational budget for 2014-15 is just over $950,000. Meals on Wheels is partially funded by the Older Americans Act, and Meals on Wheels clients donate about 98 cents towards each meal. That leaves about $6 per meal that needs to be raised. On any given day, 200 residents of South San Mateo County receive home-delivered meals, which requires Peninsula Volunteers to identify an additional 24,000 each month in order to continue feeding South San Mateo County older adults and adults with disabilities. Funding support through the Community Development Block Grant is one piece of the puzzle and critical to sustaining the program. Competition for grants is greater than ever, and in fact, we have to compete against other programs, even in our own parent organization, for funds. There is no one puzzle piece grant that covers the gap in Older Americans Act funding, and to date, no additional funding for fiscal year 2014-15 has been confirmed. This funding is vital to continue delivering meals to our most vulnerable residents. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. And our final public speaker in the public comment section is Dolores Farrell.
Morning, Commissioners. I'm Dolores Farrell from East Palo Alto. I work at the East Palo Alto David Lewis Reentry Program, of which I'm sure that many of you are familiar with. And thank you so much for the support that you have given the reentry program since its inception in, I think it's 2006 or something like that. What I do there is I'm the administrative assistant and also case manager, which I've done since day one there. For those of you who are not familiar, we provide services to formerly incarcerated and probationers, adults, and regardless of their status, whether it's realignment or whatever, we welcome anybody from East Palo Alto and the Bellhaven area who's in that situation. We've recently added youth. We have a population of youth that have problems in school. They've been kicked out. They may also be on probation or formerly in Hillcrest or someplace like that. We provide all kinds of services, helping them with their documents, cognitive development groups, which is my favorite, family reunification, in addition to job search and providing resources. We are in the neighborhood. We speak the language of reentry. We are highly trained and experienced. We've been around for a while now. The city of East Palo Alto is providing us free rent. They've been funding us for the last couple of years. any additional funds we would receive would go directly to providing things for our clients that we need, such as materials. And we found out one way to get great participation with our clients is snacks. So buying snacks is really, really important. And again, I want to thank you for your support in the past. Looking forward to any support you can give us in the future.
Thank you for your comments. It's now time to set the agenda and to approve the consent agenda. Are there any consent items that members would like to remove?
Just remove item 42 from consent to regular.
Okay, we'll note that. Any others?
All righty. And I would move to set the agenda and to approve the consent agenda items with item number 42 coming to our regular agenda.
Second.
A motion made and seconded, all in favor? Aye. We'll now move to a series of presentations and awards. And our first presentation will be by Supervisor Tissier concerning Older Americans Month.
Thank you, Mr. President. This month of May is recognized nationally as Older Americans Month. And with us today is the San Mateo County Commission on Aging Chair, Mary Lorenas. And I know I saw some other commissioners back there. I'm sure she'll introduce them. Just a little by way of background, the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors, in compliance with the Older Americans Act, established the San Mateo County Commission on Aging in November 12, 1969. And since its inception, the Commission on Aging has advised our board and worked extensively on senior issues, including health and nutrition, affordable and accessible housing, employment opportunities, legislation, elder abuse, transportation, and new resources and services. The work of the Commission on Aging is important because we know that by the year 2030, the number of county residents over the age of 65 will surge to include 1/3 of our population. This resolution will recognize that through Social Security and Medicare and local health agencies like the one maintained by San Mateo County, we have affirmed that it is the responsibility of our society to watch out and care for the health and overall well-being of our older Americans. Older Americans push for the progress and quality of life that we relish, and so we hold them in the highest esteem. Please join me today and our board in recognizing our older Americans and thanking the Commission on Aging for their work by proclaiming May as Older Americans Month in San Mateo County. And I have a proclamation that I would like to present to the Chair of the Commission on Aging, Mary Lorenas. Make it official, I'll make a motion to approve the proclamation.
Second. Aye.
Yes. And now we're going to have a presentation by our chair on the work of the Commission on Aging.
So first of all, I have a few handouts. Would you give this to Mr. Ives?
Push to go forward, push to go back, don't hit that.
So good morning, supervisors and members of the public. I'm Dr. Mary Lorenas. I'm the chair of the San Mateo County Commission on Aging. Today I'm going to give you a very brief overview of some of our key highlights of 2013, 2014, some of our accomplishments, and some of our challenges. And we have a blank screen. Interesting. Okay. So, as Supervisor Tessier just mentioned, the San Mateo County Commission on Aging mission is to advocate for seniors in the county. We do this by promoting independence and self-sufficiency, by promoting mental and physical health, and by promoting social and community involvement. So in this capacity, the Commission on Aging acts as the principal advocate for seniors in the county. We also accomplish our mission by acting as advisors to the Board of Supervisors and by acting as advisors to Aging and Adult Services. In 2013, our Adult Abuse Prevention Committee embarked on a very unique way to illustrate the problem of elder abuse by utilizing methods developed by the Theater of Oppressed and by using volunteer actors, a production of Making the Invisible Visible is scheduled to debut in June. A new committee was formed titled Isolated Senior Outreach. This committee was formerly known as Adopt a Senior Center, but upon reflection, we decided to refocus our efforts towards finding those seniors who are isolated in San Mateo County, as well as their caregivers. These are seniors who typically do not reach out to the more traditional methods and modes of senior services like adult day health care. In some of our research on this, we have found that some of these seniors tend to go to different parks or go to libraries. So reaching out to these individuals to make sure that they know of county programs is really important. Our communications committee is a new committee. It was designed to better disseminate information to the public about the workings of the Commission on Aging. And in order to accomplish this goal, a new Facebook page was developed. We have a new commissioner who has been instrumental in doing outreach to our LGBTQ community. She contacted the Pride Initiative, who agreed to do a public screening of the movie Gen Silent. Gen Silent discusses the pain and the struggles of an elderly gay couple as they age and develop health problems. Our legislative advocacy group, or committee, advocated to endorse several key bills during 2013-2014. Importantly, the reauthorization of the Older Americans Act. We had some changes to our infrastructure. In order to increase our membership and increase recruitment, to improve our efforts for recruitment, and to reach out to a more diverse population, we have created a new brochure, which includes a quote from Supervisor Tessier about the importance of doing community volunteer work. Our procedural rules underwent a rewrite to include two vice presidents to work alongside, or two vice chairs to work alongside the chair in order to provide better leadership to the members, but also to help with all the workload that is generated by commissioners. We have some very, very active commissioners on this in the community Commission on Aging. A new committee was designed for education. This came about as in 2013 there was an internal review of what commissioners felt was really important and lacking in the commission. And it came out that commissioners felt that they needed more orientation and more training. So the education committee was founded. There were some committee changes. The community-based continuum of care became part of the New Beginnings Coalition. This is because upon reflection, we found that there were several areas of overlap and duplication. So we decided to integrate the CBCC into NBC to streamline the process and to better utilize commissioners' time. As mentioned, there was a refocus of Adopt a Senior Center, was refocused to isolated senior outreach. However, if in the future we feel that we may need to revisit Adopt a Senior Center, that committee can always be reinstated. And new is the Communications Committee, as I mentioned earlier. This is going to be a really important way that we can let the public know, elected officials, and communicate with the Board of Supervisors about what is going on with the Commission on Aging. And looking forward, One of the things we'd like to do is rethink the size of the commission. Do we have enough members? Is 21 members too many? Do we need more like 15? We want to do this in order to make sure we're really using people's time efficiently and we're being productive and meeting all the goals required by the Commission on Aging. We are going to revise our recruiting effort and the process for recruiting so that we can really target more diverse population to improve the diversity of the commission members. But also we want to improve the vetting process of new applicants. We're going to improve education of commissioners through better orientation and training. We're going to improve our community visibility through our outreach and through our new website and Facebook page. We want to expand upon the new commissioner mentorship program so that new commissioners are more easily assimilated into the process. We're looking forward to developing a closer relationship with the Board of Supervisors. And finally, we want to develop a culture of openness and remain open to new ideas that can better address issues of older adults in San Mateo County. So finally, I would like to say thank you very much to Supervisor Tessier for helping us with our brochure, but also for reaching out and having an open door policy to the Commission on Aging. And I'd like to thank Lorraine Simmons for her actions as liaison between the Board of Supervisors and the Commission on Aging. So thank you. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Mary. You did a great job. You make a very
thank
wonderful
you.
chair. I know there's other members in the audience. Maybe if you could stand or raise your hand. I thought I saw Dennis. Yeah, how are you? Dennis is a former chair. Any questions for Mary? Great job.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
For your ongoing work with seniors in the county. It's been one of the many areas you've focused on to our benefit. I'm always struck by this statistic that by the year 2020, nearly 1 out of 4 San Mateo County residents will be over the age of 65. So we have a changing demographic. Our next matter is a proclamation designating May 2014 as Mental Health Awareness Month. So I would ask, I'll move support of that if we could have a second.
Second?
All in favor? Yes. Aye. Okay. It's my pleasure to spend a moment recognizing May 2014 as Mental Health Awareness Month. Over my tenure on the Board of Supervisors, I've really been struck by the breadth of services we offer people that are facing mental health challenges and the complexity of those issues and that kind of the spectrum of services that we need to offer. I recently had the chance to visit the Cedar facility in Redwood City. It's just a remarkable accomplishment to provide really wonderful housing and supportive living services for individuals who have faced mental health challenges. So I think we're all very proud of what our county does in this area. But one issue that you can't solve with money alone or great people alone is stigma. And that's really a cultural issue. And society has come a long way in lessening stigma concerning mental health, but we do have further to go. So with that, I'd like to present this proclamation, I guess, to Steve Kaplan. And I believe Rocio Corneo and Sharon Roth may also be joining us.
Board members, Mr. Maltby, Mr. Byers, every year we receive this proclamation from you, And I was thinking about this coming over today, that I'm sure other counties, their boards do this, but I think in San Mateo County it has more significance in many ways because of the long-standing support that this board over many, many years has given to our behavioral health services. And more recently, through Measure A, your commitment to fund some of the gaps that we identified in our services was really unprecedented. And not only did you provide us those additional resources, but you allowed us to focus on a broad range of populations that we serve and different programs that we need. And I really appreciate that. And on behalf of our clients and family members and providers and staff, I want to thank you for that support. I think we're going to see some really significant enhancements to our, what I think is an excellent system of care over the next several years because of that investment. So I want to turn it over, though, to two other people who want to share with you just a few things from their perspective. I introduce first Sharon Roth, who many of you know. Sharon is just kind of one of our best advocates for mental health services. She serves on our commission. She was one of the founders and is a trainer for our crisis intervention training. And she just always shows up. So I really have appreciated Sharon's support. So Sharon?
Good morning. I'm Sharon Roth, and I'm a resident of San Mateo County. And I really didn't expect to speak this morning, but I really do want to thank you all so much as our Board of Supervisors for the support that Measure A has allowed for mental health services and also for early education. I was at a wonderful conference yesterday about some of the things that our county is doing, which is marvelous. In general, I just wanted to say thank you to all of you for the continued support for mental health services. My loved one does not live in this county, so I can always look at things very objectionally, and I am always impressed with what we're able to do in this county. And I also would love to invite you all to tomorrow afternoon's Mental Health Substance Abuse Recovery Commission Awards for the Tony Hoffman Awards, which should be around 4 o'clock tomorrow. So thank you once again.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thanks, Sharon. And we always take this opportunity to ask a person who's received our services to share a little bit of their story. And I'm really pleased. Most times it's an adult, and I'm really pleased today that we have Rocio, who's really a younger person who has really a compelling story that she's actually written about in our Wellness Matters, which is our newsletter that will be coming out tomorrow. I read it the other day, and it was just astounding what she wrote and shared. So, Rocio?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rocio Cornejo. I'm 19 years old, and I will now be sharing a little bit about my story with all of you. The most difficult and rewarding experience in my life transpired within the first few weeks of my high school career. However, before I continue, I must say that for the first time in my life, I have been able to get beyond my internalized shame, a shame instigated by society's beliefs, my family's, and even my own. Having experienced clinical depression and bouts of hospitalizations has not deterred my drive to succeed in life. I do not view it as a hindering fault in my body or in my character. While this illness had manifested itself in my sporadic attendance in high school, anxiety over the simplest things, complications with medications, and self-hate, it has recompensed me with so much more. Depression has taught me that everyone in the world, no matter their successes or seemingly immaculate lifestyles, face obstacles. From this, my empathy and compassion for others has flourished. It has invigorated in me a desire to help people and be of a service to them. Assisting other people with emotional difficulties and speaking about my own experiences to support groups has helped me to perceive my illness with optimism and view it with the acceptance it deserves. Moreover, it has taught me to set long-term goals for myself, which is why after transferring to a therapeutic day school and being informed that I would not graduate on time, I was able to progress. Determined to surpass any obstacles, I began putting things in perspective and fully taking control of my life. There were many instances where I felt discouraged and almost embarrassed about not going to a comprehensive high school. However, I discovered that these thoughts of insufficiency only reflected what I feared the most from other people: misunderstanding and judgment. The unvarnished yet significant truth is that the effects of stigma are debilitating. They are deplorable to the human soul and bring about sentiments of shame and absolute disdain for one's medical condition. Over time, I have been able to come to terms with everything negative that was said to me during that difficult period. From family members who angrily pointed out that I should be ashamed of myself for not valuing the life that God gave me, to medical workers exclaiming that I was far too young to be dealing with any sort of issue that derailed my thirst for existence. On several occasions, I had been asked by friends what I would change about my high school years if I was permitted the opportunity to do so. Perhaps if my psychiatric history vanished, I might have gone to homecoming and prom. My social anxiety would have dispersed, and I would have attended football games like the rest of my friends. Perhaps I wouldn't have been so afraid. Yet those precise what-if questions are absolute venom to the soul. It is free and immediate torture if one allows the mind to wander in that direction. My response to that question has always been delivered with a soft smile and a firm nothing. For as strange as it may sound, my mental illness has been a blessing in my life. With it, I have acquired specks of wisdom that young individuals my age don't have, simply because it comes with experience. Because of this, I have been able to form a deeper connection with my family and look beyond the surface of the people that I meet. It is a part of me that I treat with outermost respect and dignity. It is so dear and so incredibly sacred that I dare not approach the lessons it has taught me. I am not ashamed of it. I do not loathe it. I accept it and I embrace it. Although every individual's experience is different and sacred in their own right, the deep sadness still comes and goes. Whenever life seems to be getting a little bit more difficult, I have to remind myself that every scar on my body and every rainy day is a testament to the fact that the bravest thing I ever did was to keep on living when I wanted to die. There is not a single day that goes by where I am not reminded of the hospitalizations, the sleepless nights, and the fear and confusion that became a staple of my everyday life. Even though I am not that tormented and severely despairing 14-year-old girl anymore, I honor her every day, and I make sure to never forget that because of her, I became the woman that I am today. Ultimately, the most powerful lesson depression has taught me is to enjoy life even with all of its flaws and misgivings. Although everyone has perhaps conceived their own definition of a pleasant life, it's the obstacles that offer us the most dynamic of life lessons. Living with a mental illness has enabled me to endure hardships, knowing that I have the capacity to overcome them. I do not fret over small complications, but embrace them as a part of life. Out of depression, I have emerged a more spiritual, positive human being. I find myself being inspired every day by new opportunities to grow and prosper. While depression is an irrevocable part of my history, medical charts do not compensate for the individual that I am. They won't today, and they won't tomorrow. Such experiences do not have the power to constitute the person. They have the power to transform them, as I've allowed them to. Thank you.
Thank you, Rocio, for sharing your story. It's very inspiring. Your comments are eloquent, very well put. By sharing your story today and through other means, you're going to help a lot of people. And we're very grateful and very, very impressed. We have one speaker, Therese Dyer. Mr. Fox, your comments, I think, have already been delivered previously. So, Ms. Dyer, if you have a comment relevant to this matter.
On the other side of the coin of the proclamations and all the good that's happened to this young lady, there are things that need to be improved, which I support Mr. Fox with his Laura's Law. Also, the Chang case from Pacifica that was shot by a police officer. That's not what we do to our mentally ill people. That's not what we do to veterans that suffer from PSDT. That's why we need the required funds from the state of California, not only the $90,000, but the $250,000 that the county was awarded to help these veterans. So what I'd like to say is also that the Chang family spoke at the city council meeting in Pacifica and was really not heard by our mayor, who's had 40 years in the mental health industry in Fort Miley, where she deals with veterans. They're still waiting for an answer. I encouraged them to come here, but evidently they didn't, so I'm speaking for them. Where Mr. Fornkault, the coroner, had taken part of the person's brain for an autopsy or without the parents' permission. They're quite upset about that. So I'd like to have the county look into this. Evidently, Mr. Fornkault is also up for re-election.
Yeah, I don't know if these are really relevant to the comment at hand. I'd like to end. I'd also like to suggest to Mr. Fox, Ms. Dyers, and others, when we do these commendations, these are really celebratory moments. And if you have, your ongoing standard criticism in the county, it'd be far preferable to share those in the public comment. We've heard them multiple times, and the statements, the negative statements, really impinge upon what we're trying to achieve here. And, we celebrate some very courageous people and some very remarkable accomplishments in this county, and we honor the right for all to speak. But there's a time and place for these comments, and I would suggest you take my suggestion under strong advisement. So we're going to move on to our next proclamation, which is the CalFresh Awareness Month. And the county has been working extremely hard over the last year or so to improve our CalFresh uptake. CalFresh is a critical program for people in our community. It's one that we want everyone eligible to be aware of and hopefully take advantage of. So I would like to make a motion, if I could have a motion to approve the recommendation.
So move. Second.
Thank you. Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So we'll present this to you, Ileana, and then we'll have a few comments.
Can I ask the team to come up?
Oh, of course.
I'm Johnny come lately. Nancy, don't be shy.
I want to be in the picture.
Good morning, Board President Pine, honorable members of the board, Mr. Malpe, Mr. Byers. We're here this morning to proclaim May as CalFresh Awareness Month, and I'd like to take a brief moment just to share some exciting news of how far we've come and what next steps we see for the program. First, San Mateo has done a very impressive job of advancing our outreach and education campaign over the last year. We averaged an increase of 9%, which placed us 4th overall in the state in terms of growth, and 1st among Bay Area counties. More residents are getting enrolled and becoming aware of the benefits they're entitled to. Second, the agency has organized a series of events and initiatives we will be rolling out to further increase our CalFresh awareness. The CalFresh outreach events are posted on our website, and we are going to kick off the CalFresh in a Day event at Skyline College on May 12th, where clients will be able to apply and receive their EBT card on that same day. In terms of new initiatives, I'm pleased to announce that we were approved for the Restaurant Meals Program, which allows CalFresh clients to purchase hot foods. This is important for our homeless population who don't have access to kitchens, and our elderly who may not be able to prepare foods for themselves. We're partnering with our colleagues in the health system to reach out to older adults and to educate them on CalFresh. We are advertising CalFresh benefits through multiple media outlets, and we're working with Penn TV to produce a video on how easy it is to enroll in CalFresh. And I recently met with Superintendent Ann Campbell to develop new communications between both organizations, the school districts and the agency, to ensure that eligible students and their families are aware of the benefits. I want to recognize the CalFresh outreach team that's here this morning: Desi Tafoya, Nancy Rodriguez, Leslie Randolph, and Alejandra Jaro. Thank you for your energy, your passion, and dedication to making this program a success. We wouldn't have achieved these results without them. And at this point, I wish to introduce our partners, because the agency is the processor of these benefits, but we can't do this without our partners such as the health system and Second Harvest. I have with me today Ann Dyer from Second Harvest Food Bank. The agency has enjoyed a long-standing and productive partnership with Second Harvest, and they've done a tremendous work of helping our residents enroll in the program.
It's an honor to be called out, to be recognized by Supervisor Pine, the commissioners, Director Rodriguez, and my colleagues and peers here at, from HSA. The food bank continues to see unprecedented need. We serve over 74,000 people a month in San Mateo County, and we know that our physical food can't do it alone, and that's why we've partnered with HSA to help do this outreach, to get people enrolled in CalFresh. We're proud to have submitted over close to 5,800 applications over the last 3 years for CalFresh. And again, that food source is so critical, and it's effective, and it's important that we continue that. We compare notes with food banks all over the state who also partner with their county partners to do CalFresh outreach. And I just want to let you know that we are so lucky and fortunate as a food bank to partner with San Mateo County. The team at HSA, the orientation you have to really partner with community organizations and to collaborate is really remarkable. And we'll go places and people are complaining about those partnerships. We don't have those complaints here. So I really want to thank you for that. We look forward to future combined efforts to reach people in need with the food resources that are available to them. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Appreciate your hard work in this area and the progress you're making.
Mr. President, could I just ask Ileana a question?
Sure.
Could you just talk for just a moment or two about that restaurant program that you mentioned?
The restaurant program, the county can apply to allow beneficiaries or people who are enrolled in the program to purchase a hot chicken prepared at Safeway or one of the restaurants. That had not been the case in the past. Why, we're not too sure, but when we looked at it, it just didn't make sense. And we chatted with our health partners to get their input. And while we'd like everybody to eat healthy, and this may mean maybe they're going to be at fast foods, it really makes sense to allow people to purchase it at restaurants. And we have a little logo that will be placed in the windows identifying those restaurants that accept the EBT card.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you again. The next proclamation is to designate the week of May 3rd through May 10 as Affordable Housing Week. I would go ahead and move approval of the resolution.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
I'm sure that many in the audience have seen the recent press stating that by some measure, San Mateo County is now the most expensive place to live in the United States, or the San Mateo-San Francisco area. So affordable housing is a extremely challenging problem for us, and it's becoming increasingly difficult for almost anyone to live in this county, particularly if they're moving here and trying to establish themselves. So it's certainly appropriate that we set this week as Affordable Housing Week, and I know that HART will be doing lots of events. So I'd like to present this proclamation to Mark Moten and Joshua Hugg, and I think they have a few comments. Joshua Hugg. Okay.
I'll keep this relatively quick, but President Pine, Board of Supervisors, thank you very much for continuing to recognize the importance of housing affordability in this county. As President Pine mentioned, this is the least affordable county in the country. Over 3,000 counties were evaluated, and between us, San Francisco, and Marin, it costs on average about $37, almost $38 an hour to afford an average one-bedroom apartment here, which is a tall task. And that also raises the bar when we have discussions about the community that we want to be and how housing affordability precludes some of the considerations for people who have important contributions to this community but are unable to afford to live here. And the statistics bear that out, not only in the cost of housing, but also in the in-commutes that we have here. We have over 61% of the people who work in this county live outside of the county. That's over 200,000 in-commutes. And that, along with other things, has a profound impact on their ability to have a quality lifestyle. So we're glad that Affordable Housing Week is recognized, and we encourage you to attend the events that we're holding throughout the week. We have the Heart Lunch. We have our own legislative breakfast. Mid-Penn Housing is doing a grand opening for their new development in San Mateo at the old police station site. Just a sobering statistic for that particular development. There were 60 units offered for this development. There were about 2,500 applicants. So as you can see, the demand continues to be incredibly high here. So in an effort to continue the dialogue around housing affordability in the community that we want to be, we are glad that we can honor the people who are working in this area and expand awareness. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh.
President Pine, can I just make a couple of quick comments that both myself and Supervisor Slocum are both on HART, and what it stands for is the Housing Endowment and Regional Trust, and we are hoping to raise a significant amount of money. Actually, we were looking at a program because we think we need to add somewhere in the neighborhood of at least 40,000 housing units in San Mateo County over the next, I think, 10 to 20 years. And not only is San Mateo County not affordable, so is San Francisco, so is Alameda County. It's becoming the whole Bay Area. And, the problem with that is that, where are your children going to live? You start thinking about that in terms of generational. Where are your children going to live? Are they going to live in Nevada or something? Or, so I always look at it from a personal point of view is I want to make sure, fortunately, I'm fortunate. All three of my kids live fairly close by. But I think when you see companies deciding to pull up stakes and go to someplace else like Texas, because of the fact that their employees don't have any place to live. So in the long term, not only from a personal point of view, but from the economy, it's really incredibly important that we have housing for our younger people, for our workforce, for teachers, for police officers, for firefighters. And so I know Supervisor Slocum and I are dedicated to working on that. We also work on HOPE, which is the housing for homeless. And my last initiative really has to do with farm labor housing. People don't realize this is a major agricultural county, at least on the coast, on the south coast, we have about 1,700 farm workers living really in substandard housing. So there's a lot of work to do. Glad that you're involved with this, Josh. And I see Shauna from Rebuilding Together, Janet Stone, Kate from HIP Housing. I know there's a lot of people who are really involved in working on this. It's, I think, incredibly important to the future of the county, both for our people and for our economy.
Any further comments? And thank you for your remarks, Ms. Supervisor Horsley, and we will move forward to our final proclamation, which is the presentation concerning the very exciting Makers Weekend. Supervisor Groom.
Thank you, President Pine. It's my privilege to introduce a proclamation declaring May 17 and May 18, 2014 as Makers Weekend in San Mateo County. I'll make that motion.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Makers Fair is the epitome of creativity, ingenuity, do-it-yourself spirit. It brings together artists and crafters, engineers, positive hackers, food makers, music makers, and scientists who like to tinker and who love to make things. And this is a family-friendly weekend. It's resourcefulness, green, and an overall passion for learning for makers of all ages. So I'm pleased to introduce today Linda Asbury, who is the CEO of the City of San Mateo Edge Economic Development, and she is here to receive this proclamation on behalf of the Makers Fair Weekend.
Thank you, President Dave Pine. Thank you, and the rest of the supervisors. And what? Oh, this first. All right. I didn't get the memo. Yeah, I want a picture of our San Mateo Innovation Week. Okay, so I'll start all over. Thank you very, very much. I am representing Sherry Huss and Dale Daughtery at Maker Fair. I do not work for Maker Fair, but I'm so excited that they come annually to our San Mateo County Event Center. They bring 120,000 people in over the weekend, and those people are staying over. They're shopping. They're getting gas. They are buying Maker Fair T-shirts. So it is a great economic engine for us, as well as the innovation. It's pretty exciting, and we are getting to be known throughout California and everywhere as a hub of innovation, and Maker Fair just adds to that. So thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing everybody there this weekend.
Thank you, Linda.
Great. That is an incredible event. Well, that completes our presentations and awards. If it's the pleasure of the board, I would suggest we go ahead and take item 42 concerning Alpine Road at this point. Supervisor Horsley.
Okay, is Jim Porter still? Oh, there he is. I have Jim talk about this. Originally, I actually introduced this measure originally, and it has to do with the truck traffic on Alpine Road, and not all trucks, but we were thinking about removing some of the very large trucks. But after one of our hearings, sometime maybe a couple of months back, there was discussion about the Highway Patrol's not really particularly thrilled with the idea. Plus, they would end up having to enforce it. Menlo Park has some problems because we would end up having to move it onto Sand Hill, and so we had some community opposition. Not necessarily overwhelming, but nevertheless there was a lot of concerns. And one of the things that came up in the meeting is that when there was a discussion about Stanford and all the projects that they have, essentially rebuilding the hospital and other things on the campus is dramatically expanding. They've done a pretty good job, I think, of removing trucks from Alpine Road. In fact, they actually even tell truckers that if you drive on Alpine Road and you're found to be in violation of their directive, they would have you removed from the contract. So, but the real problem there seems to be for Stanford Weekend Acres, the folks to be able to, get out into traffic or make a left turn or right turn or get onto Alpine Road. And at that meeting that we had a couple of months back, it was suggested that one of the mitigation measures that never really was pursued really was a stoplight at 280 and Alpine Road. And so then I went back and talked to our traffic engineer, Diana Hsu, and asked, what do you really think? I mean, am I, running down the wrong trail here, so to speak? And the thought was that having a traffic signal at Alpine Road 280 actually was better for traffic management because it would at least it'll create breaks in the traffic. The traffic is a mess on that road. There's just way too many cars. It's no longer the bucolic little roadway that it used to be. And so I asked, and I know that there are probably people who have an opposition to this, would like both the trucks taken off and both the traffic signal. But I thought I would have Mr. Porter explain why he and I think that this is actually a better for traffic relief.
Thank you, President Pine, members of the board, Mr. Malpe and Mr. Byers. Supervisor Horsley summarized the issues very well. I'll restate them a little bit from our point of view.
Hopefully.
So our staff has done quite a bit of work and received quite a bit of feedback from really residents of Stanford Weekend Acres, and to some extent folks from Portola Valley as well. We notified Portola Valley of what we were thinking of doing so that they were aware of what staff was considering on the segment of Alpine Road between I-280 and essentially Sand Hill or Alameda. And what we found when we did our studies was during the 10-hour period during the daytime, you see about 16,000 vehicles a day there on average. Of that, roughly 2% of those vehicles are trucks. And if you run the numbers, that's about 400 trucks a day out of 16,000. So if we were to completely ban trucks, and that's essentially impossible because trucks with a destination within that area still have a right to be there, even if you ban trucks, you would still have a huge volume of cars on that roadway. As Supervisor Horsley mentioned, we've received feedback from law enforcement that actual enforcement of that truck ban would be quite difficult because the CHP really doesn't have the staff to be patrolling Alpine Road continuously to check on trucks. But one of the comments that we did receive was regarding congestion and the trouble that folks are having getting out of the Stanford Weekend Acres area onto Alpine Road. So right now, there is a lot of cars. And part of the reason why there's congestion on Alpine is that the intersection at I-280, where the off-ramps come off and Alpine meets 280, is operating at level of service F, which is about as bad as it gets. It's essentially gridlock. We ran a traffic analysis on what would happen if you put a signal in there. And the level of service got a lot better. And what we think would happen if we were to pursue a signal was that A, we would get cars to move more quickly on and off of Alpine Road, but B, the signal operates as a natural metering device. So people get greens and a big platoon of cars go by and then there's a red and there's a gap in traffic. So what we think will happen and what we think is the best solution here is that if we install a signal, there's going to be more opportunities for folks to get out of the neighborhood onto Alpine Road. It seems to be the most practical solution to this problem. As Supervisor Horsley mentioned, there's just a lot of cars on Alpine Road, and there's a very limited amount of tools in our toolbox to deal with that. But we believe that a signal is really the best option at this point. And with that, I'll conclude my presentation and be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions from the board?
I guess I have just one. When you say, are you going to actually initiate a traffic study to do the modeling to see if this actually works for the flow of traffic, or have you already done that? I couldn't tell by what you said if you've done it already.
President Pine, we've already done that analysis, and we found that the level of service will improve greatly. What we would, depending on your board's action, if your board approves staff's recommendation, we would begin seeking grant funds and initiating a dialogue with Caltrans on the signals. We've already contacted Caltrans, so they're aware of our thoughts. But what we'd like to do is avail grant funding to try to get signals in this location. So that work, the preliminary work that you had questioned, has been done by staff.
And have you also looked at not just signalization, but metering versus signalization?
Well, we had, through the president, we had concentrated on the signal aspect of it. I think what will happen, since this is within Caltrans right-of-way, they will require us to look at ramp metering. Because if you think about it, those stop signs are sort of acting as ramp meters right now. And the congestion acts as a meter. So we're not quite sure how Caltrans will address that. Their concern is the main line, which is I-280. So they're going to want to preserve traffic flow on I-280. And as part of any sort of signal analysis, we'll likely be required to look at the operation of the freeway itself. And if putting a signal in negatively impacts I-280, then we would have to investigate the metering. But that would be something that Caltrans would direct us to do, and we would be required to do it if they chose so.
Thanks, Jim.
Any further questions? We do have one speaker, Janet Davis.
I live on Alpine, and it was in the 80s when I first suggested a traffic light at Alpine. The agenda mentions a negative declaration. I haven't seen that. I don't know if it exists. As usual, Mr. Porter has the story all wrong. Right now, Alpine Road is completely backed up in the afternoon from Santa Cruz Avenue to I-280. In the morning, the freeway is backed up almost to Page Mill Road. You're not going to solve anything at this point with a traffic light at Alpine Road. All you're going to do is make the situation worse. What one of my neighbors suggested was on-demand lights at Bishop and at Stowe, which would keep the traffic flowing along I-280 and Alpine Road and allow people to come and go. A traffic light isn't going to solve the problem. Right now, when I came this morning, Alameda was completely gridlocked because people choose Alameda now in lieu of the freeway because it's so screwed up. Sand Hill is completely blocked. Page Mill is completely blocked. Stanford was aware of all of this, and they designed Sand Hill Road for their truck traffic. Even Stanford concedes that Alpine is not fit for their trucks. And the reason Mr. Porter only found 2% of the traffic on Alpine to be trucks was because I kept bitching at President Hennessy about the trucks, and he did something. It wasn't Mr. Porter, it was me and the neighbors. And something needs to happen that improves it for the people in Ladera, in Portola Valley, and the commuters on I-280. And this won't do it. Thank you.
Thank you. We do actually have one more speaker on the item, Lenny Roberts.
Morning, Mr. President and members of the board. I'm Lenny Roberts. I think I'm speaking as an individual on this, as a resident of Ladera, and having written you as on behalf of the Committee for Green Foothills a couple of years ago about the need for a ban on the large trucks on Alpine. I do think it's been very helpful for Stanford to have gotten very serious with all their contractors, but we still do see these very large dirt hauling trucks and other super large trucks on that road, which it just really is not designed to handle. And I can understand the difficulties of enforcement, but I think I still would support strongly having a ban on the larger trucks on Alpine. We have a problem simply in this area now of just too many vehicles trying to go places all at the same time, and we're seeing it especially now northbound on 280 in the afternoon, late afternoon. Northbound traffic on 280 after 5 o'clock is maybe 20 mile an hour speed all the way up to Farm Hill in that whole stretch. And that's a significant change. I'm on the Congestion Management Environmental Quality Committee of CCAG. the prior congestion management documents that we've been reviewing over the years have not identified that stretch of 280 as being as impacted as it is today. So we're seeing success of many high-tech companies. We're also seeing them stepping up with their buses, which are very important to reducing traffic. But overall traffic is just being, I think, an indicative of the economy that's been recovering. So I think that truck conflict on Alpine still will remain because of other major trucks using it. So I would still encourage you to move forward with some kind of truck restriction. Thank you.
Supervisor Horsley?
Well, if somebody I don't know if anybody has any other questions, but I'm prepared. I'm going to make.
We do have, I think, question from
go ahead.
Supervisor.
One question, can we do both? Can we ask Caltrain for permission to install the light as well as continue to pursue a ban on trucks?
Through the president, yes, we can. Again, staff doesn't believe that a truck ban is going to be enforceable or relieve any of the congestion issues. It can go both ways. I think we will make a substantial investment in a truck ban, and it's not clear to us whether it will be approved. So we've already heard from the cities. Okay. We're looking at about $50,000 worth of studies before we can implement a truck ban. And there's no guarantee that the city of Menlo Park is not going to oppose this, because what will essentially happen is the trucks from Alpine will go to Sand Hill, which is under their jurisdiction. They've already expressed to staff their concern with the grades on Sand Hill and putting more truck traffic on that road heading downhill towards the intersection at Santa Cruz is very concerning to them.
Thank you for that.
Sure.
Mr. Porter, just a variant on that question. I mean, I recall our discussion from the fall and the memos you wrote about, you know, all the ripple effect and all the protests from other jurisdictions if we were to ban traffic on Alpine. But, you know, is there any, what about if there was just a limit on the very biggest ones, or is there some place on that spectrum that makes sense, or is it that doesn't really change your perspective on it?
I mean, we could investigate that and report back, but I think the concerns are still going to be there. So if we ban the larger trucks, those are really the ones that the other jurisdictions are worried about in terms of that grade on Sand Hill and really Menlo Park. So I think we're probably going to see the same types of comments from those other jurisdictions.
Okay.
Just one question. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Porter, back to Janet Davis's comments, suggestions by the neighbors of the two spots that would have lights. I can't remember, Stowe and one other area. Bishop. Could you comment on that?
Certainly.
idea?
We've done what's called a warrant study, which is the study that is required before you install a traffic signal. And those two locations did not meet traffic signal warrants. So it doesn't say that the board can't direct us to install a signal, but installing a signal at that location is not recommended through engineering practice and could result in added congestion to Alpine.
When you say warrant study, what does that mean?
So the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, which is a nationally recognized standard for traffic engineering, has 10 warrants in it that basically tell you what sort of conditions trigger the installation of a traffic signal. It has to do with traffic volume and several other issues. But we've run each and every one of those warrants with the volumes that we collected, and none of those warrants were met for those two locations.
Assume means that puts us in greater liability because it didn't really meet the standard. So you put a signal in, and if something happens, we're on the hook for the liability because of that.
There is certainly potential. I think my experience has been when there is an accident, the first thing that occurs is the jurisdiction gets sued, and the attorneys ask for essentially the basis for your traffic regulations, and that would definitely come up.
Thank you.
Can we also add, if I'm not mistaken, one of the issues also had to do with line of sight. So when you have a traffic signal at one of those locations, and because of the curvature of the road, you end up with the potential of rear-end collisions. If I'm not mistaken, that was one of the issues.
I'm sorry, through the president, that certainly could be an issue. I don't have that kind of detail on that, but that's something that we look out for.
Okay, so,
Yeah, we have two actions for consideration. One is to proceed with the work on the signalization. And there's a second item, B, that instructs, we'd be instructing staff to cease work on a truck ban. So we probably should take those separately.
do you have one more speaker card on this?
No.
Okay.
President
Well,
Pine, I think there might be one more speaker over here.
Well, it wasn't clear that, Ms. Jensen, would you like to speak?
No.
You would need to come up here and speak at the rostrum if you would. Thank you.
Just in the spirit of Maker Faire Week.
If you could introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm Brian Scholl. I'm a landscape architect, and just in the spirit of Maker Faire Week, the idea was, what's the context? Are the trucks going to Stanford Shopping Mall? Is there a lot of new businesses drawing in big trucks, new stores? And then thinking, is there a way to have the businesses comply with an ordinance that requires them to use smaller vehicles, if that's a solution or help or anything like that? Just kind of looking at the broader context and what are the other architectural, ordinances that could be put in place. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm going to make a motion to initiate, on Part A, to initiate the investigation concerning the installation of traffic signals at Alpine Road and Highway 280. Also add to that, I will also add that, ask the Public Works to also look at an on-demand traffic light at one of the locations, either Pierce Lane or some other location by Stanford Weekend Acres, to do an analysis of that as an option as well.
Okay, a motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That is
And
passed.
I'm also going to make the motion to, I just don't think, I'm going to make a motion to cease the work on the truck ban. I just don't see that as, I don't think it's enforceable. I think we just end up at odds with both CHP and Menlo Park. I just don't think it's worth continuing to study and spend money on.
Motion made and seconded. Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That also passes unanimously. Okay, thank you. We will now move to a public hearing to consider and take action on the fiscal year 14-15 annual action plan for housing and community development. So we'll start with the report, and then we will have a hearing. We do have about 10 speakers on this item. So if we could begin with the report, Mr. Lowell.
President Pine, members of the board, Mr. Malpe and Mr. Byers, good morning. This morning, we are bringing recommendations originally from staff and then through our Housing and Community Development Commission for allocation of the 2014-15 annual action plan. And this is the plan for the use of next year's CDBG, Community Development Block Grant, and Home and Emergency Solutions Grant Program funding. We had this year 46 applications totaling $8.5 million, and we had $1.7 million in additional commitments. So the total number of applications was 10.7 million. We had available 4.9 million, so it was less than half that amount, and we are recommending 36 projects for that total 4.9 million. This is the conclusion of our process that leads to the submission of the annual action plan to HUD for their approval for next year. And the process really begins many months ago. It started by staff in the fall, and then the Housing Community Development Commission, HCDC, had a priorities setting public meeting in December. That was the first public meeting. And then they have then there was an applicants workshop, which was extremely well attended in January with staff. Then HCDC held a workshop on the applications in March, and then they held a public hearing also in March on the applications and made the recommendations that you see before us today. I wanted to thank the staff, particularly Marina Yu, who leads this process, and our HCD manager, Martha Ruiz, and also especially the HCDC, the commission that your board appoints, spends an incredible number of hours, volunteer hours, reviewing applications, and then holding study sessions and public meetings to come up with these recommendations. As a result of the recommendations today, we will, if these recommendations are approved, we will be able to increase the amount of affordable housing in the county. We will increase the amount of funding available for our housing, our small home repair program, as well as our regular rehabilitation program. We will also be funding a number of public facilities projects throughout the county and many public services in the county, including support for our core service agencies and our homeless shelters. With that, I know there are public comments, and I'm prepared to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Lowell before we open the public hearing?
I do have one on the format. So in your left-hand column, you've got the amount requested, and then you show potential allocation last year. And then these other columns here are for this year? The staff?
They are, correct. Sorry, it's a delicate balance between too little and too much information, but you're correct. Going across, it's the amount requested, the amount from a prior year, and then the staff recommendations and HCDC recommendations.
So we gave out those last year. These other ones in these columns are ones we're asked for this year, and the total for what they're asking is in that staff recommendation, which carries over to the HCDC.
The total that they've requested is the very first column, the amount requested.
Right.
And then, sorry, yes, so then going across, the next to last column is the total of staff recommendations, and then the HCDC, the last column are the recommendations that are being made to your board today.
Okay, but the fiscal year 2013-14, they got all this money here was from last year?
Correct.
Got it. Okay, just want to make sure I'm...
Sure.
Okay.
Any further questions for Mr. Lowell? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing on this item. And as I said, I think we have about 10 speakers. So we'll begin with Vinnie Aurora, or perhaps Sabrina Lacoste. I don't know if you both want to speak, or which you are free to.
Good morning, esteemed members of the Board of Supervisors, Mr. Maltby and Mr. Byers. My name is Vinnie Aurora, and I represent Star Vista, and we're grateful to be here to appreciate the county administering agencies that are supporting Star Vista's Daybreak program, one of the only transitional living program for homeless youth in this county. I'm pleased to welcome Sabina Lacoste Harris, the program manager for Daybreak, to share a success story. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Sabina Harris. I just wanted to share a quick success story just to give you a feel of what we do and how we help our youth in this county. There's a young woman who came to Daybreak when she was 20 years old, had a very volatile family home environment. She came, got a job. She was lacking definitely in her social skills due to her growing up years, and we helped her with learning how to speak up for herself, learning how to follow the social cues, learning how to maintain and keep a job. So she's had a job since the fall of last year. She just reached her year mark at Daybreak last month, and we were working with a community partner to get her a housing voucher so she can move forward in living independently. She feels now that through this program, she's ready to work in this community. live on her own successfully and, move forward with her life. She wanted to be here today to share her story, but she actually had to work this morning. So, but thank you very much. It's an honor to serve this county and the youth in this county. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Terry Chin, followed by Kate Comfort Har.
Good morning, President Pine and members of the board. My name's Terry Chin. I'm the manager of the Fair Oaks Community Center with the City of Redwood City. And I think I'm going to say I'm also representing the Core Services Agency Network today. And I just wanted to, first of all, thank you for the support you have provided over the years and that you continue to provide for the vital services that we make available to our community through our Core Services Agency Network. I wanted to just share a few things just from like today and the last week. Just to remind us about, those vital services are really needed every single day by folks in our community. So this morning when I walked into the community center, we had 5 people waiting outside for us to open our doors at 8 o'clock. It was 3 men who were looking for shelter, 1 woman looking for shelter, and 1 other person coming for information about taxes. So just sort of a random thing, but looking for help. And so that's what they come to the core agencies for. And so of those folks coming for shelter, I didn't get to follow up on everything before I headed over today, but I'm pretty sure that probably 3 of them are going to be going over to We Hope Shelter. So something else you're also supporting, and we're very grateful for, because each day we're able to offer 3 day beds or overnight beds over at We Hope Shelter. So at least 3 of those 4, and then we'll be waiting to see what other shelter possibilities are available. I wanted to share within the last week, I signed the application to provide utility assistance to a couple that own their own home. The husband is a real estate agent, and wife recently had to go on medical leave. They've been going through their retirement funds and their savings to try to stay afloat, and they finally got to the point where they were about to shut off their utilities. So they came to Fair Oaks, and we were able to assist them through some of our financial assistance programs. And then in the last week, seeing several times one of the young women who has a disability, and she was displaced by the terrace apartment fires. She's still looking for a place to live. She has a Section 8 voucher, but she hasn't been able to find a place to live. Just to wrap up, I want to say that people come with us with lots of needs. The people who come are really resilient. One of the women that we assisted from the Hallmark fire last July, we helped her find an apartment. She was able to move in, and sometime maybe 3 months ago, she had a problem with dental issues, and so we were able to help her resolve that. But since then, she's come back around. She helps us with our monthly food program when she can. She was at her State of the City address just about 3 weeks ago, and she came up to me and she said, Terry, I'd really like to try to help connect people in our community to what's going on, because I think that's really important. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, this is Kate Comfort Har, followed by Robert Vernon.
Hello, I'm Kate Comfort Har, Executive Director of HIP Housing. We provide access to affordable housing throughout San Mateo County. And first and foremost, I want to say thank you for your comments today about affordable housing. It's so important to keep that on the radar always. But also I'm here today to thank you for the support that you've shown for our programs, especially our home sharing program. That program has seen a 38% increase in demand, and we're seeing the dynamics of the clients that we serve changing. Similar to what Terry was saying, those at the lowest income levels seem to be most dramatically impacted. Of course, they struggle always. But we also have seen people who have historically had stable housing become destabilized, especially seniors and young families in rental housing with skyrocketing rents and buildings being purchased and rents being pushed up. We've also seen an increase in demand from people in the middle income range. Last week, we had a full-time school teacher in the Foster City San Mateo School District with 2 teenage children looking to home share. We saw a realtor who's historically had a very strong business, whose business has completely fallen off because she serves your average client who can no longer compete for housing. So she has no income. She's looking to home share. We're working more and more closely with Star Vista. Last month, we placed 2 foster care youth in home sharing. And then we were told just anecdotally that we had 10 teachers in the Pacifica High School District that were not able to stay last year as a result of housing costs. So again, we're seeing people being pushed into poverty because of housing costs. So your support of our programs, we place thousands and thousands in housing every year. And while we can't solve HIP housing can't solve the housing crisis on our own, your support of our programs definitely adds to the pool of creative, affordable housing options in this county. And we thank you tremendously for your ongoing and longtime support. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Robert Vernon, followed by Luis Vizcardo.
Good morning. My name is Robert Vernon. I'm the Associate Director of Shelter Services for Envision Shelter Network. And I'm here to thank you for your support of Envision Shelter Network and all the services we provide for the homeless of San Mateo County in running our shelters. Initially, I was going to speak about how I look at significant data trends with our clients and how me and my supervisor, Dr. Brian Greenberg, dream about cracking the code for homelessness and how we provide focus groups with the chronically homeless to address barriers to self-sufficiency. But I was very moved by the young lady who spoke so courageously about how she saw her mental health challenges as an opportunity. And it made me want to comment that, give a shout out for my staff. We have some of the best staff that work out there. If you've met Renee at Maple Street or Tammy, who works graveyard shift for the last 20 years at First Step for Families, myself included, I've been homeless before. So my staff understands what it means to need help and how some of the greatest challenges in our lives can provide the greatest opportunities. And we hold our clients accountable to that. They come to our programs, they must work the solution and treat every life challenge as an opportunity. And I think that's what makes us special. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to acknowledge my staff and thank you so much for your support of our services. We do the best we can. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, which were very well put. Excuse me, we have Luis Vizcardo, followed by Reynaldo Jimenez.
Oops. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, San Mateo County Board Supervisor Dave Payne. Good morning. So my name is Luis Vizcardo. I work in a Renaissance. So we are a nonprofit organization about how people start a small business. And I want to say thank you very much for all your support for our programs. So it's in this economic moment, it's very important we help people to want to start a small business. And this moment is very important because a lot of people want to start a small business or grow up the business, and they need tools. That means information. So we offer the information about in business classes. So right now, I want to introduce Reynaldo Jimenez. He has a business, carpet cleaning business, and we want to let the opportunity to him to explain how Renaissance helped to him. One more time, I'm sorry. I brought some calendars too, so I want to give so in this calendar you can see the different clients we have in the classes, and of course 2014.
Still morning. Good morning, everybody. And I'm here with my wife. My name is Reynaldo Jimenez, and my wife Maria Silva. She's right there. That one. As he said, we started our business in the year of 2007 in Redwood City, and in 2009 I have my own notes. We became full-time self-employed, and then we made Renaissance because we needed help with our business. We wanted to structure our business, but my wife always likes to look out for new ways to become better, and she found Renaissance. So we took 2 business courses from them, and in this course we learned to have our vision of our business and create objectives to grow, our business and to be successful. First, we learned how to create our business mission, which in turn, it helped us to know who we really are and the purpose of our business and the benefits that we wanted to offer to the community as a business. And then we learned to create our business plan, which in turn helped us focus our attention in the direction we wanted our business to go. For example, the type of customers we wanted to attract to, etc. So they focused our business direction. And then they also helped us to create our own website. They gave us ideas. So we created our website, which gave our business a more complete image, a more focused. And then finally, we also learned to administrate our, the different aspects of our business better because we had professional help. So from that time up to now, up to this point, we have seen very good things about it. First of all, our sales have more than tripled, which we're really happy. We purchased a second work van and equipment, and we have generated employment and have 4 employees now, which is really good because we were full-time self-employed. So now we have employment for other people. And we are continuing to grow since we now have a better and clearer vision of our business. And to conclude, we really want to thank Renaissance, and they're here, Tim Rasso, Luis Vizcardo, and we do want to thank all of you because we know that you make this possible. And this institution provide us with tools to grow our business and be successful. And we also tell our friends to come and take classes with them. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Shauna O'Shaughnessy, followed by Marilyn Bousset. Hello, Shauna, welcome.
Thank you. President Pine, members of the board, Mr. Maltby, Mr. Byers. My name is Shauna O'Shaughnessy, and I am Executive Director of Rebuilding Together Peninsula. I'm here today, like many of others, to thank you for your ongoing support of Rebuilding Together Peninsula, but also the preservation of affordable housing. The Community Development Block Grant Program provides essential funding for many key agencies here in San Mateo County. For Rebuilding Together Peninsula, CDBG supports both our National Rebuilding Day program and our Safe at Home minor home repair program. Our minor home repair program couldn't exist without CDBG funding, and it really is the front line of defense in preservation of affordable housing. We're able to get in early and prevent loss of housing, helping people stay in their home, supporting seniors who want to age in place, and actually preventing homelessness and supporting that multi-generational transfer of housing. 2 Saturdays ago was our 25th National Rebuilding Day, and we were so honored to have Supervisors Pine and Supervisor Horsley join us. It was an incredible day. People came together to support their neighbors, real work was done, and homes were transformed and lives were changed. It was magical. But there's so much more work to do. I think it was highlighted by Supervisor Pine, by the comments of Kate, and affordable housing here in San Mateo County is so challenged. The cost of living is going up. People are struggling with difficult choices. How do they pay for medicine, buy food, do home repairs? And we see Rebuilding Together as just one of the solutions in the affordable housing puzzle. If we are able to keep homes in good shape, then people are able to pass that home on to their children, and they're able to remain in the communities where they've grown up. And so this is something that we have seen changing, that we are serving more people who have inherited their homes and they want to stay here and have all the benefits of San Mateo County. So thank you so much for your support. We are incredibly lucky. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Marilyn Bousset, followed by Carrie Wong.
Good morning, President Pine, members of the board, Mr. Maltby, and Mr. Beers. My name is Marlon Bussey. I am a career educator at Sequoia High School, as well as pastor of St. James AME Zion Church in San Mateo. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this morning. I realize that the St. James AME Zion Church has not been recommended for funding through the county CDBG, but I appreciate the opportunity to let you know about the good work the church is doing in collaboration with the St. James Community Foundation. The church, the foundation, and AAC-HAC have partnered with the San Mateo Foster City School District to provide a summer math program. The summer math intensive will be working with 50 to 60 students from North Central San Mateo. Our students will come from the 3 schools in the district with the lowest math scores, Burrell, Abbott, and Bayside STEM middle schools, with the goal of preparing these students to become successful in geometry when they enter high school. This will ensure that students are fully eligible for 4-year college admissions. Our summer program will then be followed by after-school tutorial 4 hours a week at the church. We have received funding thus far from Silicon Valley Community Foundation, the City of San Mateo, CDBG, the San Mateo Foster City School District, and the County Health Department for program support with other grant applications in process. What we are lacking is funding to improve the facility to be used for the year-round tutorial. The building is 97 years old, and the bathrooms need renovation in order to handle the increase in use, as well as upgrading to ADA accessibility. Grant funding seems appropriate to me because St. James is a church that is opened more than it's closed for the purpose of community use. We're doing as much as we can to serve North Central San Mateo within our current limitations. With renovated bathrooms, we could partner with other organizations and accomplish even more. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. And Carrie Long, followed by Timothy Russell.
Good morning, President Pine and honorable supervisors. My name is Carrie Lung. I am a Director of Housing Development at Mid-Penn Housing Corporation. I, too, would like to thank you for all the efforts you have made to help us build more affordable housing in the county. And I also want to commend the HCD staff for all the very hard work they do and how creatively they think in terms of bringing all the resources to bear that they can towards this critical need. Regarding the action plan funding recommendation for our newest affordable housing project in the county, which is 6800 Mission Street in Daly City, 52 units of affordable family housing. We think this is another example of their great strategic thinking. And thanks to the way that they've put together the funding for this project and your continued support, we're making great progress towards bringing this to reality. In fact, just last week, the Daly City Council unanimously approved this project. And together with your funding recommendation, we will now be able to apply for the federal tax credits, which is the last piece of funding we need to bring this project to reality. I also wanted to tell you some other good news about another project that we are working on thanks to your help with, and it was mentioned in the consent calendar, the Affordable Senior Project in Foster City. We recently have indications that we will be given an award of tax credits for that project. We're cautiously optimistic that will come to fruition, in which case we will begin construction on that project this year. And finally, I just wanted to echo Josh Hugg's invitation for you to come to our grand opening of the Delaware Pacific community, our newest affordable housing community to open. It's this Friday, and it would not have been possible without your support. Thank you.
Thank you. And our final speaker is Timothy Russell.
Good morning to President Pine and the Board of Supervisors. I want to just thank you for this opportunity, and namely Supervisor Slocum. I want to thank you. He came by and really sat down with us and really saw our vision there and gave valuable input, and we're able to move forward on some things that because of your support and the support of others, we've been able to really just launch out and do some things for small business development, financial education. But I'm up here to thank the staff, the commission, for recommending the build out of an incubator space in East Palo Alto that will allow 7 small businesses to not only be housed as their first office space, but also receive technical and accelerated services from Renaissance to be able to grow their business during a period of time so they can move out and have a location within the county to be able to grow their business, and others can move into the incubator. Your support, a lot of other funders where your support was contingent on them giving us any kind of support. So I want to thank the commission again and the staff for recommending it to you so that we can build out this incubator and help 7 small business on a regular basis. So thank you again for your continued support.
Thank you. I think that concludes our public testimony. If we could have a motion to close the hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded to close the hearing. All in favor, aye.
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 Mr. Lowell, I did have one or two more questions for you just to wrap up. When looking at the kind of the high level budget, we've invested about $350K in housing rehab programs, and then we have another $126K in housing rehab loan programs. How much discretion do we have with these funding streams to decide how much goes into rehab versus new housing? I personally am a very big proponent that rehab is probably the most very cost efficient or more cost efficient way or interesting way to try to get more affordable housing. Is building these facilities from the ground up, it can be very, very expensive. So what is our ability to, is that money all earmarked, or is that a judgment that we make in allocating across those sectors?
Those are, the strategic decisions that are made. There are restrictions in the service area, but your specific question between rehab and new construction, there is not anything there. In rehab, we have a fund that comes back to us as loans are repaid. We're able to dedicate more resources that way, but that's shown in this budget already. And also, if we know of a particularly large rehab project coming, say, where a multifamily project is being rehabilitated and it's going to cost many millions of dollars, that could, depending on where in the process that enters into the process, the budget gets increased. But to answer your question, it's flexible.
Okay. Just wanted to check on that and state my interest in rehab programs. And then my second question, could you tell us a little bit more about the program management fees, which I guess are about 20% of the allocation here, and what those entail?
Yeah, a little less. The 20% represents about $150,000 of direct costs to the department for outlays for things like environmental studies or work that we do on behalf of the projects. And then the remainder of it, which is about $700,000, is the administrative overhead. So the department operates on the basis of these federal funds. So that actually is paying staff and rent.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions, Supervisor Groom?
Mr. Lowell, on the Mount Zion Church, I have two questions. You say located within another CDBG entitlement community.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean?
It means, there are 5 entitlement jurisdictions in the county. The 4 major cities, Daly City, South City, San Mateo, and Redwood City, and then the county. The county receives its CDBG funds on behalf of the other 16 cities, the small cities, and the unincorporated county. We do cooperate with the entitlement jurisdictions. You see us funding, say, something in the housing project that Mid-Penn spoke about in Daly City. In that case, it's benefiting countywide. That's the difference.
So my second question is are there other funds available for this sort of is a rehab project itself?
Mm-hmm.
Are there funds in some other category that you have that
Absolutely.
they might be eligible for?
Yeah, I had a brief discussion with the pastor after our public hearing in the department, and some of our partners that are being funded today can do some of that work. It is all federal funding, so there are a lot of what else? There are a lot of restrictions and rules.
Okay.
Sometimes there's a misunderstanding that we cannot, by law, spend money on religious structures. That's not true. We can definitely do it, but it's prorated, and it's prorated in a way that we cannot spend money on areas that are used primarily for worship. So if there's a new front stairs and the front stairs are used 80% of the time by worshipers and 20% of the time by kids going to a program, we can fund 20% of the front stairs.
So perhaps you and I can work together and to see if we can assist them in some way? Sure. Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Otherwise, we could take a resolution.
I'll make a motion to pass a resolution approving the fiscal year 2014-15 annual action plan for housing and community development.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Yes.
Okay. See, it's
Just one comment.
Yes.
You and I went on that bus tour with Rebuilding Together, and we did see a rehab project. Was a woman who was essentially handicapped in a wheelchair with 4 children, and the house was essentially unlivable, and they made it. It was like out of a television program. It was the first time she came back and saw that house.
Yeah.
She cried, and the kids were running all over the place. It was a fabulous project. So congratulations, Sean, on the work that Rebuilding Together does.
Yeah, I'll just add that particular renovation, was nothing short of a miracle for that family, and the generosity of the contractors. I believe it was Nibby Brothers was remarkable.
Exactly, you're right. It's their construction managers and their staff. So it was really professionally done as a consequence.
Okay. All right, it's 10:11. I'd suggest we take a brief break, and then we'll reconvene in about 5 minutes. Okay, we are reconvening the Board of Supervisors meeting and move to item 7, which is a public hearing to consider an ordinance amending the subdivision ordinance concerning lot depths. So we will begin with a presentation by Mr. Eggemeyer.
Mr. Maltby, Mr. Byers, good morning. My name is Jim Eggemeyer, and I'm the Director for the Planning and Building Department. For your consideration this morning is a proposed amendment to the county subdivision regulations to modify the lot dimension requirements by eliminating the minimum lot depth standard in areas outside of the coastal zone. Before I go into my presentation this morning, I would like to let you know that I'm modifying my recommendation, and I'm going to be looking to, in regards to recent correspondence from Woodside Fire District, Committee for Green Foothills, emails yesterday, and the numerous emails and letters that we've received from residents in the Los Trencos Woods and the Palomar Park area regarding this proposed public hearing. And in fact, because of the public noticing that was sent out, we sent out over 2,100 notices of a public hearing today, and I'm pleased to see that we have this participation as well. So with all of that in mind, I'd like to see about modifying my recommendation, in fact, for this, to remand this back to the Planning Commission. And but because this has been publicly noticed, I think it's important to hear what the public has to share with us today, so that I may be able to take that information back to the Planning Commission, as well as understand your perspectives and your direction as well today. So with that, I have a brief presentation that I'd like to make and kind of give you an idea of what this all entails and how it's applied specifically to a particular location relevant to our applicant. So,
thank you.
So with this in mind, I'd like to go through our proposal and the proposed language, a little bit on the background, the example relative to the applicant's parcel, and then my modified recommendation today. So the proposal itself is fairly simple. What this is in regards to is our subdivision regulations. So this is our binder that we have in our planning and building department. These are essentially the rules for how you subdivide in the county. And so what we're really doing here is drilling down specifically to a specific section and the language about eliminating 100-foot minimum parcel depth. I know this is a little bit difficult to read, but essentially we've highlighted in the existing language 5 words that would be removed in the proposed language down below, and then we added at the very beginning of the proposed language for areas outside the coastal zone. So that's kind of the specifics on this particular project. A little bit of background here. Our subdivision regulations that we are currently enforcing go back to 1992. In November of 2012, we had an application regarding a subdivision at 2099 Sharon Road in the West Menlo Park area. Along with that, after looking at the proposal, we determined that this was an incomplete application because it did not meet the minimum 100 foot in depth. And I'll have a graphic here to show you a little bit more in regards to that. Relative to that response to the applicant, this particular option was selected, which was a proposal to amend the subdivision regulations, eliminating the lot depth standard. We then moved forward with a planning commission hearing in December. They asked us to provide additional public notification, and along with that, we returned to the planning commission in 2014, February, and with that in mind, made some modifications, and the planning commission has made their recommendation to you regarding the particular language. Just so we kind of understand the context of this proposal, it does not change any other subdivision regulations. Does not change the minimum lot size or the minimum lot width or street frontage requirements or the provision of utilities or infrastructure requirements. It also does not change anything in the zoning ordinance relative to the minimum lot size specific to neighborhoods, or a building size, which would be floor area ratios, distances from the building to a property line, or building height, or the floor area. In addition, this proposal does not approve any other subdivisions. That's a separate discretionary permit process. Those are individually reviewed and conducted in a public hearing format, either with our zoning hearing officer or with our planning commission. Applications are forwarded to other partner agencies such as public works, fire districts, water districts, sewer, environmental health, for their comments and recommendation, and if they have any conditions of approval. This is not part of what we're considering today. Also, the applications on a subdivision are relevant, subject to CEQA, and applications are subject to our subdivision and our zoning regulations. So it's not changing any of this. So now here's our key parcel. 12,900 square feet, located at the corner of Sharon Road and the Alameda in West Menlo Park. As you can see, it's only 76 feet deep, and it's approximately 168 feet along its longest side. So there's really no way of creating a 50 by 100 foot depth parcel. However, if we were to modify the regulations to essentially allow the creation of parcels in more of a square format, not rectangular, not 50 by 100, but something that would accomplish the minimum parcel size, therefore essentially nearly a square, this particular corner lot could be subdivided as this, 5,800 square feet and 7,000 square feet. And that would be then compliant with our subdivision rules and regulations. However, there would be other requirements relative to the fire districts, fire hydrant locations, the water size, or water line size to the subdivision as well. But those would also come under the subdivision regulation at a application time. So that is essentially my brief presentation to give you an overview of that. But I'd like for you to consider remanding this back to the Planning Commission in regards to the correspondence that we've received so we could understand the perspectives. There is, I'll say, from Woodside Fire Protection District, they've made reference to a fire severity map. That happens to be a tool in their toolbox, is the way I like to kind of categorize it, relative to what they do and their enforcement and their actions that they take relative to subdivisions, individual parcels. And it's important to understand that context and look in terms of the planning and buildings context and what we do within our subdivision regulations for this particular project. So I think we need additional time to really fully understand the fire district's needs as well as the individuals in a number of neighborhoods out in the unincorporated county area. So with that, I do, if you have any questions, I'm available.
Okay, let's thank you for your presentation and turn it back to the board for questions before we have public testimony. Supervisor Tissier?
Just a quick question, Jim. You mentioned, or you showed a chart that said in 1992 the subdivision regulations added this into the subdivision regulations to require the minimum. What was the thought process back then for that? Do you know?
So the Planning Commission had that same question, and so what and it's contained in your staff report, but essentially we were looking at the minimum 5,000 square foot parcel, and the previous version had a minimum of 50-foot width. So what we did is we codified the 50-foot width by 100-foot depth to give us the minimum 5,000 square foot parcel. That's the minimum we have throughout the whole county. So that's kind of where the essentially the math came from that we codified.
So in that codification, if that's the word, you didn't include any exceptions that when you saw a parcel like this, there's nothing that shows exceptions to, it's just strictly 100-foot depth.
That's correct. We do have in our subdivision regulations exceptions relative to steep slopes and locations near waterways. But that's those are the only kind of two aspects in our code relative to making exceptions to the rectangular form that's required.
Do you recall since 92 if we've ever granted a variance rather than changing the rules on something like this? I mean, I know that goes back a long way, so you may not. But I'm just sort of curious if this has come up before, and have we ever granted a variance to a regulation like this?
We've granted exceptions to the subdivision regulations, which is different than a variance. Okay. A variance has a number of different types of findings that are necessary and is essentially from a state code that requires 5 findings to be made on variances. And that's not what would be applicable for a subdivision per se.
Okay, well then maybe I'll ask it another way. Have we ever given out an exception in a situation like this?
Yes, we have.
And do you have an example?
The first one that comes to mind is the project over on Bishop, the Shahidi project, in which it backed up to the creek and involved a water course or waterway. And essentially, there was some modifications to the parcel's dimensions for that particular project.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
That's the most recent one.
Supervisor Horsley?
I just had a couple of comments, and looking at the staff report, actually, some of the comments from the public. One of them, when you send this back to the Planning Commission, are you also intending to look at the I guess it's section 7020-2-K, and really essentially, we're looking at parcels located in steep hillsides or rivers or creeks, and by removing the exception to eliminate the loophole that allows applicants to use unbuildable areas as areas within creeks, cliffs, and other hazardous areas that can be used to enable them to subdivide. It's essentially dealing with some of the issues that have occurred in Stanford Weekend Acres, where people have been allowed to use the land that goes actually into the creek, and so one of the things I would ask is that when you go back to the Planning Commission, that also be
Considered,
be eliminated
studied.
study as well.
Yes, we can do that.
The other thing is we do, well, I guess there are other comments as well, but it looks like this particular, if I'm guessing from Supervisor Tessier's comments, that this particular subdivision could be done by itself without having to change the whole ordinance?
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
This particular subdivision I used in the graphics here could not meet the requirements for an exception and does not meet the design requirements for a minimum 50 by 100 foot in depth.
Could, perhaps you could elaborate, or Mr. Byers could elaborate on that kind of technical issue. I mean, so we have exceptions, we have variances, and we have changing the ordinance. And I guess the point that's being asserted here that exceptions and variances cannot be applied to this property, only a change in ordinance.
I think the exception, if I recall, Jim, we can only apply an exception in this in cases where slope and water are at issue, right?
That's correct.
And this parcel wouldn't fit those qualifications for an exception.
Slopes and waterways are constraints relative to a particular parcel. This parcel does not have any of those constraints. And that's where you grant an exception to constraints.
And variance is not possible because?
If I could help explain what a variance is, a variance allows an existing parcel to have modifications so that it can be brought up to the surrounding neighborhood and what they may already have. A really good example is out on the coast in the El Granada area. Because of the pattern of layout out there, there are triangular shaped parcels at the convex of two streets. So therefore you don't have a backyard you have a backyard and a front yard and one side. So we grant a variance so that it has something similar in square footage and setbacks to an adjoining parcel that would have two sides adjacent to a street, but is rectangular in form.
Maybe another way to put it is variants are used in zoning matters and exceptions are used for subdivision applications.
That's helpful. I have a couple of questions, but I'll let others go first.
Just one, only because it was sort of written this way. Obviously, this wouldn't have come to us if this subdivision wasn't in question. I mean, or was there some thought over time that this would create additional lots, which therefore would create additional housing in our communities, and that would be advantageous to the county? I mean, just from this, not so much from the property tax, but for providing additional housing.
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
I know you included that here, but would this have, I guess, I mean, I like what the potential has for additional housing. I don't know exactly with all these lots what kind of impact it might have on some of those neighborhoods. I mean, that would be something to look at too, but that part intrigues me more than coming back for the purpose of a one issue, which is the one lot. This person would benefit from that if this was the desire of the board, which, to me, that direction is much more intriguing because we just talked about housing and lack of housing and all that earlier today. So anyway, I just, it came out of that, but to me, this may be something that we need to take a look at. This, may help that situation.
That's true. And one of the things I was thinking about as we move to the Planning Commission would be exploring maybe its relevance to 5,000 square foot parcels versus there are larger size parcels in Los Trancos Woods and Devonshire that exceed, or the minimum requirement is greater than 5,000. So that we're maybe concentrating the efforts with this revision to R1 that have 5,000 square foot parcels, which would be a 10,000 existing that could be subdivided.
Thank you.
See, I had a couple of questions, just one procedural one. So your recommendation, I suspect the board will also want to do this, is to kind of remand this broader issue of this ordinance change to the planning commission to look at the fire issue, to look at the issue raised by Mr. Horsley, look at other issues we might flag. So meanwhile, we have this particular applicant, and does that all get put on hold?
That's correct.
While
The application has been on hold while we've processed.
Because again, you pointed out that there's no legal way to, I see, I kind of didn't connect the dots. Okay, so see a couple of questions. So the proposed ordinance exempts the coastal zone. I'm sure there's a good reason for that, but could you just tell me why that is?
If we looped it all into the coastal zone, this in fact would take, given previous track records, years to get through the coastal commission.
Okay.
We're currently working on a traffic study out there, so I think that that's important to understand what are the larger constraints in the coastal area, and that's, we have one road, north and south, Highway 1, in the coastal zone, versus our Bayside area, we have a number of transportation roads and systems.
Okay. In the LCP, my colleague points out. It's the kind of an informational question. On page 4 of the staff memo, where you break down all the unincorporated neighborhoods where this might be applicable.
Yes.
I think it'd be helpful to see beside each of the neighborhoods how many properties. There's a total of, as I understand it, 103 additional properties would be created.
Right.
And maybe you could show by neighborhood.
Yeah, if you were to look on your attachment C, attachment B.
I didn't print that one out. Okay.
Attachment B, we have a summation of.
What page is it?
Maybe 31. Well, yes.
Okay, I don't think I got that far. So I'll go ahead and look that up.
Yeah, we've been able to summarize each of the locations, how many exist, and then new lots that would be proposed, as well as the percentage of increase in that particular location.
Yeah, that's my oversight. And again, very elementary question. When we talk about width versus depth, width is the road frontage, right?
Yes.
Okay. And see another question on page 6 in the memo. You say that you think that all the properties that might be created by the ordinance are in existing neighborhoods with existing infrastructure. I wonder if that's really the case. I mean, because some of these places are kind of hilly, right? I mean, do they really have really think we have infrastructure to support all these parcels? Or is it you just make a strong statement here that all the lots that would be affected are in existing neighborhoods with existing infrastructure?
That's correct. Infrastructure, from my perspective, is existing road systems, water, and a sewer line.
Which could, in the normal course, be connected to these new homes.
Right. And in fact, they may be substandard, but that's through the subdivision process that become potential conditions of approval, that a water line might be increased, a sewer line, fire hydrant might be required to be installed.
Okay.
Okay.
And the memo also notes, and maybe this is something the Planning Commission has already considered or could consider further. It's noted that the cities in the sphere of influence do not have minimum lot depth requirements, but then it goes on to state that San Carlos actually does, depending on the slope. So, kind of curious to know whether there's any learnings in there that we might want to look at. One or two more. So as I understand it, the Planning Commission, there's a Planning Commission's recommendation that we keep 3-to-1 depth width. We have a 3-to-1 depth width ratio.
Correct.
But if I read everything correctly, that planning didn't come forward with that originally. I mean, do you have reservations with that, or it just seemed like that was something inserted by the Planning Commission. So I just want to get your perspective on that.
I'm trying to recall kind of the Planning Commission's discussion around that. To begin with, the applicant had indicated it be removed out of the requirements. And then upon further discussion, it was that it remain in there. And I believe the whole idea behind that 3-to-1 ratio is essentially to create a rectangle so that so you don't have a 50 by 200 foot depth parcel.
So the planning department is supportive of that provision, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and then my last point is, have you had a chance to get input from, I know we're going to hear from Woodside Fire. Have you had a chance to talk with CAL Fire? Or it would be probably good to get there. I think they cover some of the property.
The county fire is in fact even on our floor in there. So I personally not, but we can involve the project planner here in future correspondence with county fire as well. And I believe I saw Mark Corbett put in a speaker slip.
Okay. Any other questions before we have the public hearing?
I just had a quick question. Thank you, Mr. President. What's the timeline if it goes back to the Planning Commission?
I hadn't thought that out. I would see it probably being in a couple months. That would be the earliest. We'd need to analyze the information that we're hearing today, provide that in a staff report, and then be back before a public hearing, before the Planning Commission. And I think we'd want to have some conversations with Woodside Fire, other fire districts as well.
And then another 30 days to come back to
If the
hear
Planning
probably.
Commission was able to refine and drill down and find the correct language that that everybody's comfortable with to make a recommendation.
Just one last point. On the chart on page 30, no, it's not page 30. Maybe it's page 31.
Yes.
32. The bottom of the chart, there are 3 parcels identified in North Fair Oaks, and then 4 parcels identified for multifamily residential.
Yes.
Is it possible to get the locations of those parcels?
Yes. Well, to tell you the truth, there were 2 parcels that would allow 2 units each. That's why in the final column you had 4 units, 4 new units. Yeah, we use GIS here to look at size of parcels and the zoning district to see and essentially create for a 5,000 square foot. We were looking for all the 10,000s, for 7,000, all the 14,000s. And we were able to kind of look at it first, where are these parcels located? And then we did an analysis on whether or not they had the potential to be subdivided to put them into this chart.
Thank you.
So, we do know specific locations.
Okay, seeing no further questions, we'll take public speakers. We do have a number of cards. Again, just to remind the audience as where things stand, it appears highly likely that this matter will be going back to the Planning Commission for further review and discussion. You, of course, could be welcome to testify there as well. But you've made the time to come out today, and we welcome your comments. And you'd have up to 2 minutes each. So we'd start with Diane Gosney, followed by Lenny Roberts.
Thank you, Board of Supervisors. I want to, first of all, just express my disappointment, I guess, with the notification process that we went through. We received notification of this meeting just 10 days ago, last weekend, and it really took all of last week for us to figure out what this was about. Honestly, if it hadn't been the fact that there was a proposed subdivision right near our area that's kind of been ongoing for several years, and we knew that, and so when this came, a lot of us thought it had to do specifically with that. And it was because of that we pursued this further and found out that it really was such a huge issue involving the whole county. It took a lot of work to figure out what this was all about, and to have to come to this meeting 10 days later, I feel like we're just kind of figuring out where we are on all this. And I have a feeling a lot of people just threw this away, not realizing what it was. And it seems like better notice as far as what you said, which parcels are we talking about? We need addresses and locations of where these are. I mean, these are going to affect people who butt up to parcels that they have no idea we're talking about subdividing. In the letter we got, it said 77 parcels, and yet when we got this, it said 103 parcels. So there's a lot of misinformation here, and I think the public really needs to be better notified down the road what we're talking about. And I certainly would have taken this a lot more seriously if I hadn't already been pursuing this other issue. If, you know, addresses were listed and I saw, oh, there's something in my neighborhood that's going to be affected, I need to figure out what's going on here. With that said, I am against this, and I really hope that you will consider looking at ways to you will look at encouraging a lot more community support for what we have, and getting people involved before considering this further. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Lenny Roberts, followed by Brian Scholl, Planio.
Good morning. I'm Lenny Roberts, speaking for Committee for Green Foothills, and we have been involved in this since the beginning, and we were very concerned that the original proposal also would have eliminated that 3-to-1 lot depth requirement. So it came to the Planning Commission originally with the 3-to-1, eliminating that. That's an issue of proportionality and compatibility with other neighborhoods. Yes, we also made the point that at the time that the communities that this would affect are all, you know, urban, mostly built out, if not almost completely built out neighborhoods. In some cases, people will scrape a house in order to subdivide and get 2 houses. And the communities involved, in many cases, are steep, have lots of steep topography, Devonshire and Palomar Park and Los Trancos Woods. They're not really conducive to encouraging subdivisions. So I would suggest, and I have suggested in my email 2 days ago, that that you maintain and this will go to planning, obviously, back to the commission, maintain the 100-foot minimum lot depth requirement, but allow exceptions only in the urban bayside communities that are not designated as high or very high fire severity. And that would take care of I certainly support the concerns that the fire marshal from Woodside Fire, Denise Ania, has expressed. And I also want to be sure that you maintain the 3-to-1 lot depth to width ratio, and to also, very importantly, initiate an amendment now as part of this process that eliminates the loophole that allows areas within creek banks or steep slopes and other hazardous areas to be included when calculating the area of a lot for subdivision purposes. As you know, the Shahidi project did that, and it was regrettable that that a creek would allow you to subdivide. Having a creek as part of your property would actually, it's sort of perverse. It should be the other way around. So thank you.
Brian Scholl, Planio, followed by Gilbert Workman.
Where are the creeks in Redwood City? No one knows. They're gone. I really want to thank the supervisors for hearing this, and thank the planning director for considering it and also remanding it. Hopefully a picture says 1,000 words. I'm Brian Scholl. I studied landscape architecture at Cal Poly. I don't want to sound arrogant, but I also studied planning and broader issues. Can you pass this to the Board of Supervisors? I think the purpose of the guidelines, and much of the guidelines, is a very well-written document. Perhaps there are a couple more guidelines that could go into it. One of the guidelines serves to increase passive solar architecture. 50% of the world's energy is currently used on heating and cooling architecture, essentially allowing passive solar architecture to just go out the window, and the oil companies to make up for the loss of good architecture. Getting back to this particular issue, I think that the purpose of the setting front and back as an oblong situation is so that the building area, the footprint, the buildable area, would be of a logical shape, allowing for a logical house shape and a logical yard shape. If you turn that sideways, still keeping the 5,000 minimum, then you'd end up with a 10-foot, thick house by 90 foot. So I think that maybe a way to amend that particular code is to develop a minimum buildable area shape or sort of minimum buildable area width of 35 feet or so. And that way you still have your 5,000 square foot minimum whole lot size, but you also have a minimum buildable area that makes sense in terms of the kind of homes that are going into these infill areas and such.
Thank you. We need to wrap up.
I've got my own plan that I've been working on since 2005, and I'd be glad to talk to the planning commission and the director and anybody afterwards.
Thank you for your comments. We have Laurel, we have Gilbert Workman, followed by Laurel Leon.
I'm Gil Workman. I live at 2060 Sharon Road. I'm right across the street from 2099. And I'm glad the supervisors all know the situation along Alameda. You were talking earlier about Sand Hill, and we're 2 stoplights north of Sand Hill. That's a very busy and dangerous intersection. It's one that 12 school buses twice a day make turns on to the Los Lomitas district. It's a very crowded connection up from Menlo Park up to the Sharon Heights Shopping Center, up to Sharon Heights residential area. In the past, you supervisors have tried to mitigate the traffic hazards there, putting in a stoplight 16 years ago, putting in speed bumps on Sharon Road 4 years ago. And it's still a place where every day the kids are on their bicycles heading for La Entrada School. And to divide a lot and put 2 houses in place of 1 seems to me kind of exacerbates the safety situation, the traffic situation, the congestion situation at that intersection. We've lived in our home for 49 years. We've heard lots of accidents happen up there at that intersection. The county records, the sheriff and the CHP know that. But don't make it worse by adding another house, another street parking, another garages, other traffic right at that very vital intersection. The safety's sake is my primary concern. Secondly, the nature of that whole unincorporated strip along Alameda is basically 1 house, 1 lot. And it's been that way ever since the county has grown and developed, but that is a good pattern, I think, to follow. And if you grant this subdivision, I'm afraid it'll set a precedent for 77 or 103 or however many it is, other possibilities of subdividing and making it more crowded, more dangerous, more congested. So
thank you for your
I'm
comments.
speaking on behalf of several of my neighbors around that area. We urge that the supervisors not approve this change in the ordinance, which would make it.
Okay, we're not going to now call, we got to keep it to the 2 minutes wherever, because of the number of speakers. Laurel Leon is our next speaker.
Hi, thank you for hearing us, even though this is going back to the Planning Commission. I was born in Palo Alto, went to local schools. I've lived at 2024 Santa Cruz Avenue for the last 40 years. This is the first time I have ever witnessed this kind of community effort in my neighborhood, the first time I have ever joined a neighborhood group, the first time I've attended any neighborhood group meeting or a Board of Supervisors meeting. And good to see the face of the person I wrote all those property tax checks to all those years. Now, I would not oppose someone buying and building their dream home in my neighborhood. I don't oppose mother-in-law units. I put one over my garage about 20 years ago, and I think that really has contributed to affordable housing in the area. It's usually been occupied by Stanford-related people. Nor would I oppose yet another traditional scale house being replaced by a McMansion, even though I don't like that. But I do oppose this proposal. First, I don't see what problem this is solving to approve this ordinance. The only benefit is maximum return on investment to developers at the expense of local residents. While this would have significant impact on my neighborhood, that little triangle of county land, it would have much greater impact on other neighborhoods in the county. So I'm concerned for them as well as us. It would contribute precisely to the problems that I listened to you hearing most of this morning. Affordable housing, not more multi-million-dollar houses, and traffic problems. My understanding is that the county government is here, including the Planning Commission, to serve the residents of the county, not to maximize profit for developers. And if this passes, it would cause me to seriously question the relationship between the county and the developers. I urge you to support the strong and clear neighborhood opposition to this ordinance.
Thank you for your comments. We have 19 more speakers, so again, if I could ask people to we really need to honor this 2-minute requirement. We have Leah Rogers, followed by Gregory Ferris.
Thank you for your time. I'm glad to see that the coastal zone is protected from all this talk of doing away with setbacks. I just like to think that us inlanders also need some protection from you all. And this is really who I'm appealing to, because you all are overlooking the Planning Commission. I'm in West Menlo. I'm one of the big lots. We could subdivide if you do this. We could get rich. Why? You know, we live next door to a lot where there's one home. It used to be the home of a Sunset Garden editor. They have been trying to build 4 homes there over the last 5 years. And it's just a tragedy. You're going to give up even a simple patio that we could sit outside. And that seems to be, that's part of what California living we would like everyone to have. And I want everyone to have a home, but I think we really look to you all to protect the quality of our neighborhoods. And I just have to say that I've never seen this degree. Everyone's busy, we all miss things, and this went really much further than I can even believe. And even that place on the corner, my kids walked around that corner, as they've mentioned, down to the La Entrada. And it's scary, and I have to say that if we can't find the protection that we need from the county, we're seriously considering incorporation into the city of Menlo Park. And I think that affects everyone's thoughts about the neighborhood, and I ask you all to consider that seriously. Thank you.
Thank you. Gregory, Gregory Ferris.
Yes. Gregory Ferris. I live on 2042 Santa Cruz Avenue and have been there for 19 years. Santa Cruz Avenue, I think you know, is where people, as they make their way through traffic, has hit the accelerator. A year ago, I saw a cyclist motionless on the pavement, half a block from my house. Traffic, as you know, is a catastrophe. And I think you'll hear from a speaker later that there's 103 new lots, maybe an underestimate. But if there's 100 or maybe well above that new homes being put in this area, those should go near transit, near our transit corridor, and there are lots of opportunities for doing that. Please do not open the floodgate for this many new homes into areas that are already greatly overtaxed by traffic, and this affects the health of your constituents, because when you go out and try to drive through this, and actually trying to get on Santa Cruz is very dangerous, that affects your well-being all day long. You suffer during the traffic, but that affects our health all day long. So as you know, and I think this is clear, that this is going to be a major detriment to traffic, and it's also a detriment to affordable housing, because the way this works, the developer buys a lot that has a home for $500,000 to $700,000. They scrape it and they put in 1 or 2 homes that sell for the million. And in fact, the applicant put in a home across the street from us, sold for 2.2. So there's going from 500 to 700 to $1 to $2 million. That's opposing affordable housing, and it's also doing a lot to contribute to a very unpleasant environment when these small homes with mature home trees are replaced with things built to the maximum. So I urge you to consider this, whether this should be a decision in favor of one person for financial gain or hundreds of your constituents. To me, it's a no-brainer, and I know this is not being decided.
Okay, we will hear from Lynn McClure, followed by Brian Schmidt.
Thank you for hearing us today. We really appreciate it. I am also a homeowner. I live at 6 Crocus Court. My name is Lynn McClure. Crocus Court is a cul-de-sac of 4 homes right off Santa Cruz Avenue in the University Heights area, which you've just heard a couple of other neighbors speak of the same area. We have put our efforts together to be here today to be able to make this presentation, and I ask you to please oversee the Planning Commission in whatever way you have within your power to prevent this from happening. We strongly believe this is nothing more than a gateway to allow multiple projects for multiple housing to be put on what are now single home lots. How that will affect us directly on Crocus Court, when this came up 3 years ago with a project that is just 1 or 2 down from the one that was presented here today. So we know it's here. It wasn't discussed, but we know it's right behind it, is that we had an appraisal done, and what would be the effect on our property values for the houses that are surrounding this particular project. This is the one that was just recently mentioned, where there is currently 1 home that would now be 4, built out to the max, 2-story houses. Instead of us on Crocus Court looking at mature trees and daylight, we would be looking into the 2-story high stucco wall of 2 houses back to back with practically no space in between. The loss of our property value between those of us directly adjacent to this project would be over $1 million. So we're here today because we not only care about the integrity of our neighborhood, but we have actual dollars in play here. And I have no other appeal than to you. We don't have anyone working within the Planning Commission on our behalf. We vote for our county supervisors to represent our interests, and we hope you do your job. Thank you.
Brian Schmidt, followed by Philip Arkley.
Good mid-afternoon. My name is Brian Schmidt. I'm 8 Crocus Court. I live next to Lynn. So we've been looking at this property across that I believe Leah mentioned as well about the Sunset Editor's house, and they've been really working hard to get this done. And I have a letter here from February 23rd, 2011, where they wanted the 100-foot variance so they can squeeze 2 more lots onto this land. And I can pass it along to you guys if you're interested, but that was the exact language that they used. And this is the drawings that were submitted, and we examined as a neighborhood group for that. And you can see that there's 1, 2, 3, 4 lots just jammed right into this lot, this big lot. It's about 21,000 square feet, I think, for the entire thing, and 2 of the lots wouldn't be able to exist without the protection of this ordinance. So I have a 2.5-year-old and a 6-month-old, and I'm not looking forward to this. We would consider moving if it came down to adding 5 more existing houses into an already crowded triangle where we live. And it's already pretty good right now. It's pretty crowded, but adding these more, I don't understand why we would even consider it. I don't see any benefit to it other than some developers in Santa Clara who, it's just a financial thing for them, I guess. It's a neighborhood for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Philip Arkley, I'm sorry, I may be pronouncing that wrong, followed by Christine Vaughn.
Thank you. My name is
Involved.
Philip Arcuni. I'm also in the Crocus Court contingent, and I don't need to add to some of the comments, except to stress that the infrastructure in the area is quite overburdened. I was in an accident last year turning into our property because of someone so anxious to exit or to enter that street that they back-ended into me. The infrastructure is inadequate. That includes things like water drainage and sewage. I have a sewer line which crosses this property that they were talking about. It's almost 200 feet long. It's a challenge to maintain. I'm not sure how they're going to accommodate these issues. And the idea that this minimum lot depth was some demonstration of Euclidean geometry, I think is kind of silly. Just like the 3-to-1 ratio was a deliberate decision on planning, so is the lot depth to ensure uniformity and access to streets and infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, we have Christine Bach, followed by Mark Colbert.
Good morning. My name's Christine Volk, and I am a resident of San Mateo County. I just wanted to say, as a few other people have said, that I still know very little about this ordinance change. I've done some research on it. I sent in a letter to Stephen to try to get some more information about this. I also want to say that I went to a party last night, Cinco de Mayo party, with all my neighbors, and it was chaos. No one knew what was happening. We were all talking about it, and I'm here representing those neighbors of mine. I'd also like to say that I am one of the properties that is being considered for subdividing, and looking at my house and seeing it scraped and having 2 houses built on that property, I can't even imagine what would happen to the integrity of my neighborhood. Already multiple properties on my street and the street next to me, this has already happened. There are many properties that are already subdividable that will change the landscape of our neighborhood if that comes down to it. And so I implore you to think very, very clearly and very strongly about your vote on this. I'd also like to mention that I've already been asked to conserve water, which I'm doing. If another single-family home was built on my property, what happens then? We've got, water issues in this county, and I just think that's a consideration as well. I also feel that I want to bring up the fact that if it was me doing the developing on my property, there would be different parameters that would be thought about because I would be living there. And
thank you. I have to ask you to wrap up.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
In general, I think that this is not the case, and so neighborhoods are not considered when the development of these homes are going on.
Mark Colbert, followed by Sam Shaw.
I am Mark Colbert, Acting Fire Marshal for San Mateo County Fire. And our concerns are in the very high fire hazard danger areas and the lots in there meeting the fire clearances, the area in the lots where they can trim back. And by going to square, sometimes you have a little tougher time meeting the back and not so much the front clearance, but the back clearance, depending on how they line up. And so we would like to go with Jim Egelmeyer's recommendation to put it back to the Planning Commission so we can deal with some of those and with those lots and maybe modify it a little bit for those areas.
Thank you. Appreciate your involvement in this going forward. Janet Davis. Wait a minute, I think that I have Sam Shaw, I'm sorry, followed by Janet Davis. Is Sam Shaw still here? I guess it's Sarah, sorry.
Hello, thank you for hearing us, even though I realize you're not acting on this now. But I'm Sarah Shaw. I live on Santa Cruz Avenue, where I've lived since 1977. We live next door to a project where our dear neighbor Nancy, when she passed away, her home, she was one of the original landowners in our area, as a matter of fact. When she passed her home property was subdivided into 3 houses. And the results for us are that now we look at our living room and we are facing a 2-story wall straight out our living room window. We have lost a mature tree on our property. One of the new houses has also lost a heritage oak as a result of this infill in that property. And we are trying to save a heritage oak in our yard that has been severely damaged by the construction next door. So it's not only, and I agree with, of course, all my neighbors about the traffic and the infill, but the infill affects our trees, affects our environment and how we live. And I would be facing a 3-story if I had not gone down to the Planning Commission and saw that they had made a mistake in their approval of the house immediately adjacent to us and had originally allowed it to go up 3 stories tall. And as a layman, I happened to catch that when I was looking at that, and they didn't properly go inside. So this, without oversight, we need your help. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Janet Davis, followed by Rebecca Smith.
I live on Alpine next to the creek, and for over 20 years I've been writing about ordinances that conflicted with state law, the UBC, the general plan, subdivision regs, or were internally inconsistent. Those were ignored. There was the 1969 flood control resolution. That was ignored. There are similar problems with the grading regs, and ignoring these problems is just going to lead to more chaos. Now, one owner was advised by planning to request a revision of the subdivision regs for his own profit that even his own developer faults. Staff reports reference GIS maps which ignore topography. There was no initial outreach to the affected communities, and when I asked for the specific places in Stanford Weekend Acres, Tim Fox played silly games with me, and I got 2,100 APNs of things that were totally irrelevant. The whole process has an odor to it, and I think that the supervision by the county manager's office of the planning department needs a grand jury investigation.
Rebecca Smith, followed by Judith Don.
Thank you. I have handouts. Actually, there's a set for each supervisor and one copy for you. My name is Rebecca Smith, and I couldn't disagree with anybody who's spoken before you. I appreciate that. You're going to remand this to the Planning Commission, but I live in the funky little Sequoia tract of the San Mateo County, and when this word came out, and a lot of people have mentioned the fact that there hasn't been a lot of notice given and a lot of specific information about what was going to happen, that came up very suddenly, and in the last 3 or 4 days, I've gotten signatures from almost 70 residents, neighbors in our area who oppose this change to the planning process. The other thing, reducing the number of, or increasing the number of homes in the area will contribute to the traffic issues as well as the sewer issues and all those kinds of things that are continuing. The other thing, the reason I've passed out this map is that this is the map that was contained in the report that came out Thursday night with the whole summary. And the lots that are highlighted in green are actually lots that have already been subdivided. So if you look at this, my house was built in 1975. I have lived in this house since 1986. My house isn't even on this map, and it's dated 2004. There are 2 other subdivisions that have been put into our area on Santa Clara Avenue over the last 10 years, and they have added, Fogle Court and Griddle Court have both added almost 9 or 10 houses where one house existed before. So I would like for the commission to use real data and accurate data when you're going forward and get a lot more community input while you're doing the planning. Thank you.
Thank you. Judith Don, followed by Jan Janning.
Good morning. My husband and I moved to 135 Doherty Way about 7 months ago. We moved from Menlo Park in the Allied Arts neighborhood where we were in an R2 zoned location. And when we moved into our house, we were the back house on a 2-house lot. And there was one house on the other side of us. And while we were living there, that one house was torn down and 2 were built in its place, changing the nature of our home from a private secluded home relative to one where there was another house just feet away looking right into our house. And that was fair game because it was zoned that way when we bought the house. When we chose our new house, it was not zoned that way, and we enjoy the peace and tranquility of our neighborhood. If this is allowed to pass, we could face that same situation right next door to us again, having two houses in the place of one. That wasn't the deal we made when we moved in. I think it was perfectly fair of the house next to us in our old location to build on it because that was the zoning law when we bought. But we bought in our current location with the expectation that our neighborhood would stay the same. So,
Thank you.
thank you very much for your time.
We have Jan Inc., if she's here. Otherwise, I'm sorry, am I mispronouncing? Is it Davina Gentry? No, it's Jannink, as best I can read. So we'll pass on that. Why don't we have J.R. Rodine, followed by Fire Marshal Denise Inia. J.R.
At this hour, good afternoon, President Pine, Supervisors, Mr. Maltby, Mr. Byers. This is a different hearing than I had ultimately expected. It's kind of unusual when Lenny Roberts and I are on the same side where we have a lot of opposition from others. But I do want to indicate that I support Lenny's comments and her presentation on behalf of the Committee for Green Foothills. I think there is also a great deal of merit in taking into consideration the fire hazards maps that will be presented by the fire marshal from the Woodside Fire Protection District. This item, as far as I'm concerned, could go back, be remanded back to the Planning Commission for further consideration, and if they so choose to recommend that certain high fire hazard areas be extracted, it does affect the numbers. But I also, in a particular case of this application, want to mirror what Lenny has indicated, what Sandy Sloan has written into you, that this type of an exception is suitable for consideration in urban areas where there is no other way to allow the subdivision of a flat parcel with full infrastructure that is not constrained by steep hillsides or water courses. That's exactly why we need this. The rationale that originally addressed the 100-foot depth was that just it was a mathematical consideration. How do you get to 5,000 square feet? Well, if you have a minimum width of 50 feet, you have to have a minimum depth. That doesn't fit in all cases. In the case of Mr. Zamarodi, who is the applicant on this amendment to text, we're perfectly happy to see that other areas are studied and possibly eliminated. But in the meantime, in this particular case, I'll wrap it up shortly. I really appreciate the board sending this back to the commission, but I would like to do so with the recommendations in Lenny's letter or my email to you with regard to eliminating the hazards provision that's in there now.
We need to wrap up.
And try and affix a timeline to the point where it does come back to the board. Thank you.
Fire Marshal Denise Inia.
Good afternoon. My name is Denise Nia. I'm the Fire Marshal for the Woodside Fire Protection District. My jurisdictional boundaries are the city of Woodside, Portola Valley, and the unincorporated areas of Los Trancos, Ladera, Skyline, and Emerald Hills. And I've submitted a letter with my concerns, and I appreciate very much Director Eggemeyer remanding the ordinance for further discussion. And I would be more than willing to participate at the planning level or at the planning commission level, to help with my expertise. The issue at hand is that the defensible space codes, Public Resources Code 4291 and Government Code 51182 require 100 feet of defensible space. Right now we're struggling in our hillside communities, which I know the supervisors are very aware of the extreme fire threat in those areas. We're struggling with properties that already don't conform. and they have a very hard time meeting their 100 feet. By reducing the ordinance to a 50-foot depth, we will never, on these new parcels, be able to create the 100-foot minimum requirement. So I urge the supervisors when this comes back to look at it, and I plan to participate, and I appreciate the Planning Commission's work on this, and thank you very much.
Thanks for your comments. We're glad that you're involved. Michael Kubiak, followed by Philip Dixon.
I was going to say good morning, but we just missed it by 10 minutes. So I have a couple of minutes of prepared remarks. I want to thank President Pine, the Board of Supervisors, Mr. Maltby, Mr. Byers, for allowing me to present our view as the Palomar Property Owners Association. Let's call it PPO for short. So PPO's position is to balance growth, which the county needs, with the need to protect public safety, the county's watershed, and the look and feel of individual neighborhoods. So we got three things at work there. I want to take this opportunity to add our voice in support of Fire Marshal Anea and also of Lenny Roberts for their sustained efforts to engage the community, us, Palomar Park, the Board of Supes, and county staff, Jim in particular and the folks who work for him, with their thoughtful and well-reasoned commentary and perspective. Our position is in agreement with Fire Marshal Anea, with Mark Colbert. I don't know your exact position, Mark, but you guys are basically consistent there. With Lenny, and it's as follows. We have three things we want to propose. One is that we support maintaining the 100-foot minimum depth requirement, but allow for exceptions in urban bayside areas that are not designated as high or very high fire severity. Two, that we keep the 3-to-1 depth to width ratio per the Planning Commission's unanimous decision. And three, and this is just something that Mr. Rodin, I believe is your last name, commented on, to include language to have county staff initiate amendment to the subdivision ordinance to eliminate the exception for provision from section 7020-2K1 that reads, and this is, since there are two attorneys here, I know Dave is and obviously John is, this is where, the devil's in the details basically, that reads, the parcels are located on or adjacent to steep hillsides, rivers, or creeks, in order to eliminate the exception that allows participants to use unbuildable areas in calculating area available for subdivision. Those are my comments. Thanks very much for having me have the opportunity. Thank you.
Philip Dixon, followed by Darlene O'Neill. Okay, thank you, Philip. Darlene O'Neill.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Darlene O'Neill. I live on Winding Way, San Carlos in Devonshire County. Winding Way is a very narrow, small road that goes up to the top of the hill, steep hill, and as we have the increased number of houses, I've lived there 30 years, increased number of houses, increased number of cars and traffic. The road, however, stays narrow and would stay narrow unless county funds were to widen it. So please consider, the road is so narrow that in large stretches, only one car can get through with the car that's parked, and it's just too narrow for this increase in number of houses, increase in traffic, and increase in the number of cars that would be a result of this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Kelly Ulrichter, followed by Davina Gentry.
Good afternoon, and thank you for hearing all of us. I agree, obviously, with what other people said. I live in the unincorporated area of Menlo Park, actually adjacent to the lot they're talking about adding 4 houses, and then my street's about 3 houses away from Sharon and Alameda. And I'd want to say there are rules and regulations for a reason. I understand there's a little bit of discrepancy about this whole lot depth. But I don't think it's up to one developer to determine what's right for the entire community based on one subdivision. And I say, you know, all of us here, we live in this community, we pay taxes, we shop in this community, and we're the ones who support the schools and make them the public schools and make them actually worth attending. So I think our voices should be heard and respected and taken into consideration. I'm in favor of gentrification, but I don't always think that replacing one house with 2, or in some cases 4 houses makes the most sense. I think these neighborhoods were built and developed, you know, 60, 70 years ago, and part of city planning is looking at the infrastructure, not just the sewage and water pipes, but Alameda and Sharon Road, they are major thoroughfares to the elementary schools and the middle schools in this area. Sharon Road does not have sidewalks. Santa Cruz does not have sidewalks. The sidewalks on Alameda are about 2 feet wide and so full of cracks, children can't walk on them. You talk about wanting your children to be able to live here and your grandchildren. I have children of myself. I can't allow them to walk to school by themselves because the traffic and the motorists in that area are so bad. There's nowhere for them to walk. Sharon Road, they need to walk into the streets. So I urge you to consider your communities and your children that live here now and take care of them before adding more people to this area. We don't need more people. I have a petition here signed by 60 people with comments. I would like these comments to be read as those people were not able to attend today.
Okay, thank you. And Davina Gentry?
Good afternoon, President Pine, Honorable Board of Supervisors. I've been a San Mateo County resident for 30-some years now, and I only just learned about this issue on Saturday, April 27th, when one of my neighbors came forward and was asking for assistance in deciphering what this meant to her in the neighborhood. I understand and appreciate the fact that you sent out 2,100 notices, but it affects more than the community, the adjacent parcels to these properties that could potentially be subdivided. It really should have been publicly noticed to a greater community, I feel. And having only 4 days to decipher 800 pages of information as a layman is really difficult. As a real estate professional, I want to tell you that within the county Selby Lane neighborhood, there have been 34 sales to date since December 2013. Predominantly, they have been larger 4-bedroom homes, 18 of which have all sold for more than $1 million. When I average the cost per square footage, this comes in at $639 a square foot. You can't tell me you can build affordable housing at that rate. The exact wording from the Subdivision Applicant Guidelines and Procedures, Section 7094 of the County Subdivision Regulations provides for the granting of exceptions. And I believe that that's the appropriate vehicle rather than one developer try and change zoning for the entire county. For that matter, it occurs to me that in representing buyers who are looking at subdivision properties, which I've done, we've very carefully analyzed the potential subdivision during a contingency period before the transaction is closed and not try and go back and change the rules after the fact. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, we've heard from a number of people. We appreciate you coming out. Did we miss anyone that wanted to speak on the item? Okay, so I could return it back to the board. There's been a recommendation by Mr. Eggemeyer to remand this to the Planning Commission.
I'll make the motion to recommend that Mr. Eggemeyer go back to the Planning Commission and also to look at the recommendations from both Palomar Park Property Owners Association, essentially to take a look at the amendment on subdivision ordinance to eliminate the exception that allows applicants to use unbuildable areas and calculate in the area available for a subdivision.
I might suggest we go ahead and just as a technical procedural matter, close the public hearing.
To close the public hearing?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Then we have Mr. Supervisor Horsley's motion and second.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Can I make a request? Because, hearing from the neighbors, obviously they know their neighborhoods very well. It'd be helpful, Jim, and I think you requested that earlier, that we get the addresses and we get a better layout of how these are interspersed in the different neighborhoods, so we can really take a harder look at this. I mean, I realize it's going to the Planning Commission, but it will eventually work its way here, one way or the other, and I think that gives us time to take into consideration what the neighbors said and really take a hard look at what impact this would have in these various neighborhoods, including the fire issue. I mean, that's the.
Yeah, we can pull that information together right away and provide that to you.
If it's correct.
If it's correct. Right. Okay.
Yeah, I would second that, because as I understand it, we're talking about 77 properties throughout the throughout the county. And if they were subdividable, that would add up to 103 within those 77, right?
Okay.
That's correct. There are a few parcels that could have 2, 3, or
Right.
4.
But when there's 77, we could go out and look at it, quite a number of them.
That's correct.
It's okay.
President Pine, if I could just make a quick, I guess a quick comment for the record with regard to a comment that Janet Davis made about a response to a Public Records Act request, particularly around Mr. Fox's alleged response to her request. For the record, first of all, we take our Public Records Act obligations very, very seriously, and we typically go bend over backwards to try to determine what the requester is seeking, and sometimes we provide more information that we think would be helpful. And in fact, that's what we did in this case. Tim Fox not only provided the list, a spreadsheet, Excel spreadsheet attachment of the 2,100 neighbors who were notified of this potential amendment, but there was a second spreadsheet that apparently Ms. Davis did not open, which included the 71 parcels that would be impacted by this subdivision amendment. And she had reacted before she, in a very offensive and assaulting email, before she opened that spreadsheet. So for the record, in defense of Mr. Fox, he responded very appropriately to the Public Records Act request, and in fact went over and above in this instance. So I want to make sure that there was no lingering concern about that.
Okay. All right, so it's 20 past 12. We have a couple things remaining on the agenda. Of course, we'll do our service awards at 1:30. We have next is our substance use treatment. So Mr. Kaplan, sorry we've had to have you waiting as long. And I guess the question is, do we want to go ahead and do this now? Because we want to give you full justice and not feel like you have to skimp just because we've been sitting here a long time.
It's your call.
What's the will of the board? Whether we should take this matter now or put it on a future agenda?
I think we should postpone it so Mr. Kaplan can have a full audience, in
Fresh
addition to just us, yeah.
Fresh audience.
Full audience.
Although,
Is it something he said?
although,
Gene's here.
although you've been waiting so long, maybe. Yeah.
I agree. As much as I hate to have had you sit there, I think it would be helpful for us to have you come on earlier in the next agenda and give us a full report and give us more time, because we're just going to rush you and then rush our comments and not really digest it fully. So I think we continue it.
We
should have done
apologize
that
for
earlier.
not thinking about that.
Doing county business.
2 hours earlier. I hope you enjoyed the land use matter.
I did. It was very interesting. Yes.
President Pine, would you like to move this to the June 3rd meeting?
Or if not, where it will fit as soon as possible. We have a meeting, of course.
Or the 20th?
We have a meeting 20th. Should put it there if we have. All right.
Oh.
Then it looks like June
3rd? Okay.
And can I just make a comment to Steve? If there's anything that was in this report that you feel there's an urgency that we need to know, could you just send us a memo? If there's nothing of great urgency, then obviously June 3rd is, Thank you.
Thank you, Jean and Steve. County manager report.
Mr. President, members of the board, you have my report in writing. If there are any questions, I'll answer them.
Questions? Hearing none, we'll move to our board member reports, and then we'll adjourn until the employee recognition. Ready to start today, Ms. Horsley?
Well, two things. First, I want to talk just a
yeah.
little bit about Supervisor Tessier and I both participated in I guess it was like a town hall forum on Beyond Newtown. I thought it was really well received, and the work that has been done to make our schools safer, so that law enforcement, mental health, school authorities all are able to share information, I think is actually remarkable. And it's not it's a remarkable achievement on the part of the staff that put this together. Michelle Gay spoke, and she was a mother of one of the children who was murdered at that tragic Newtown shooting, and she did a fabulous job. And I think we all appreciated her trying to make something good come out of something that was essentially a tragedy. In any case, I thought it was a successful day, and I thought our project that we've been working on for the past months with Congresswoman Jackie Spear have really borne some fruit. I have two adjourned memories. One is a Joyanne Wendler. She was passed away recently. She was the wife of the late Paul Wendler III. Many of us remember Paul Wendler. He was in the DA's office for a number of years. He was a real stalwart in the DA's office, and so I knew Paul pretty well, and I knew Joe and Wendler as well. She was very active in the community. She was a former nurse. In fact, I believe that Supervisor Groom knows her from that. She was also real involved in South San Francisco politics for a long time. In any case, she recently passed away. And the other adjourned memory is of an acrobatic pilot. I know we all read about this accident the other day. It was Half Moon Bay aerobatic pilot Eddie Andrini. He died in a fiery crash at an air show at Travis Air Force Base. He was piloting what is called a Stearman biplane at the Thunder over Solano Air Show at Travis Air Force Base on Sunday. It was, I'm sure many of us have seen it on the news reports. It was a pretty tragic accident. In any case, Eddie was he was a well-known acrobatic pilot over on the coast. They also, Andrini Brothers is a construction company, and so they're well known for being in construction. They have a hangar over there at Half Moon Bay Airport where he had a whole collection of World War II planes, like a Russian MiG, for example, and he used to fly those over the water, actually, not over the land, and was a character. He was one of the guys who put together that the Dream Machine. He's a stalwart of the community. He is survived by his son, who's also Eddie Andrini. I think the deceased Eddie is Eddie Andrini Jr., and I think his son is the third. But he was a great guy, and we're really, upset and sorry about this really tragic accident. That concludes my report.
Thank you.
I'm going to add a word about Joanne Wendler, if I may. She was a great, great nurse and a really great human being. She was a major contributor to every community outreach for healthcare that Mills Peninsula did. So everybody loved her. I'd also like to adjourn in memory of Stephanie Hill. She's a longtime member of the San Mateo County Paratransit Coordinating Council. That's the group that advises on Ready Wheels and Ready Coast and all other paratransit services. She was very smart. She was very engaging. She was very caring. And she spent all of her life in a wheelchair, but boy, it didn't limit her at all. She had boundless energy and always had plenty of ability to get herself around and get to meetings and make her comments. And I used to watch her buzz down the street and sort of like ideas flowing out of her head as she was driving her wheelchair down the street. And I've known her for, well over 20 years, and she'll be missed. She was a real force in this community.
Thank you. Supervisor Slocum?
Ever so briefly, I won't do the Beyond Newtown since Dawn touched on it, but on June 7th is Disaster Preparedness Day. Just a friendly reminder, it's the 10th annual at the Event Center. So please join us. It starts at 10 a.m. You get in free and free parking for the first hour.
Okay, thank you. And, just a couple of comments of my own. This Thursday is Bike to Work Day. A number of us are going to bike around starting at 7 here at the county center and go to some of the Energizer stations. All are welcome. I just wanted to make a comment on during the weekend of April 26th, 27th. On Saturday, I went to the Pacifica Beach Coalition. It was the Earth Day cleanup. And then Supervisor Horst and I were at Rebuilding Together, celebrating all the volunteers doing work to improve homes. And then on Sunday, again, Supervisor Horst and I went to the Upper Barn celebration. And what really struck me, that's of course at Wonderlick Park, at the Folger Barn. Yeah, and it just really struck me, just, how many people, you have volunteering here in this county. There were hundreds, if not thousands of people on this beach cleanup, hundreds, if not probably thousands on Rebuilding Together. Yeah, so just in that one weekend, there were thousands of people in this community volunteering. So when we talk about our assets, if we ever listed all those down, we're lucky. And then finally, I meant to make a comment on one of the consent items concerning Samsara and the pay down, and we just kind of continue to today in the consent we've just formalized our approach we're taking, but I did want to ask the county manager if in connection with the new budget, if he would bring us some thoughts on what more we might consider doing if affordable. All right, so we're adjourned until 1:30.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, you careful with the running. Okay, the Board of Supervisors is met in closed session, reconvening at this time. Mr. Byers.
Thank you, President Pine, members of the board. The board did meet in closed session to discuss labor negotiations, and there was no action taken today.
We're adjourned. Thank you.